A guy named Teru walks through a garden and explains that he recently moved to a school in Okinawa from Tokyo. Afterward, he enters the school and takes a seat in the front row while everyone else is busy talking. Soon, a girl shouts his name from behind with a bright smile, so he turns around to look at her. He recognizes her as Hina, the girl he has a crush on, but cannot talk to since she speaks Uchina-guchi, a dialect of Okinawa that is different from standard Japanese. He wishes her good morning, but stumbles over the word good and immediately scolds himself. As she starts to talk to him, he realizes that he can't even understand a word she is saying since the Uchina-guchi dialect dates back to the time when Okinawa was not even part of Japan. As she continues to talk to him, he listens silently and can't help but notice how cute she looks while scratching her face. A girl named Kana stops by and joins them in the conversation, telling Teru that Hina is discussing the roughness of the sudden rainstorm. He thanks her for the help while Hina rushes to hug Kana, which makes him jealous because everyone can understand her except him. He realizes that Kana and Hina are good friends, which reminds him of all the times Kana has helped him understand Uchina-guchi. He then recalls the time when Hina offered him a brown sugar snack, but he didn't understand, so Kana translated what Hina said. Another time before a football game, she wished him good luck and Kana translated again, as she knew that he wouldn't be able to understand Hina. He also recalls all the little phrases that Kana has taught him and gets her a drink to apologize for always making her interpret. As he finds her standing outside the class, he offers the drink and she tells him there was no need for it. She then tries to grab the drink, but her finger rubs against his hand and something sparks in her. Teru explains to her that learning the Okinawan dialect is giving him a hard time, while Kana hides her face behind the drink, thinking that she can't tell him she is teaching him the dialect because it is an excuse for her to talk to him. She then advises him not to force himself to learn the dialect and to let it go with the flow. As the duo continues to talk, Hina suddenly barges out of the class and holds Kana's cheeks, asking why she is blushing so much. As Teru starts to write down what Hina just said, Kana stops him saying that it is nothing important and puts a hand on Hina's mouth, making her shut up. She thanks God for the fact that Teru doesn't understand Uchina-guchi, or it would have been embarrassing for her if he got to know that Kana was blushing because of him. As the time to leave school approaches, Hina and Teru walk back together, and she talks to him about a TV show with a big dog in it. He looks around for some help as he fails to understand her and spots Kana in the crowd. Delighted, he shouts her last name Higa, and suddenly people start to gather around them. It turns out that all these people are named Higa, and it baffles Teru. The two girls save him from the crowd and take him back to school. There they tell him that Higa is a very common name in Okinawa, and if he ever shouts the name again in public, he might attract even more people. Teru recalls the situation and compares it to a zombie apocalypse, thinking that Higa must be like Tanaka, a name very common in Tokyo. But the girls tell him that Tanaka is ultra rare in Okinawa. This shocks him, and he tells them that he would think twice before shouting Kana's last name in public again. Kana thinks that he can call her by her first name Kana and only realizes that she has said it out loud when Teru replies that maybe that is why people in Okinawa avoid such confusion by calling each other by their first names. Hina says that Okinawans have very common surnames, so they call each other by their first names, and since Kana is cute, you should call Kana as Kana. The next day, everyone is enjoying spring, and again, Teru spots Kana in public, with Hina standing right behind him. He decides to shout her name, but stops midway as he's about to say Kana. He thinks that calling a girl by her first name is weird, so he shouts Kana-san, but again attracts a lot of attention. He gets confused and an old woman taps on his shoulder, making him turn around. She tells him that he is very romantic, but he needs to work on his pronunciation, and adds that the right pronunciation is Kana-san, which translates to I love you in the Okinawan dialect. Without realizing, he starts to shout Kana-san, making Kana's heartbeat start to race. Teru asks the old woman why Kana is not replying to him, so the old woman taps on Kana's shoulder and tells her that her boyfriend is calling her. Kana turns red in shyness and loudly tells her that he isn't her boyfriend. She also tells Teru to only call her Kana. Afterward, Teru finds himself in another trouble as he encounters a lost child crying while sitting on a footpath. He tries to calm the child down but fails to do so, and is soon joined by Kana along with Hina, who asks him about the child. They ask if he is lost, and he tells them that he thinks the child was looking for his mother and tripped on the way. Hina sits on her knees and hugs the child, thinking that he might have been surprised due to tripping. Kana sits alongside and offers the child some water, while Hina says Mabia Mabia Urikuyo and pats him on the back while hugging him. Teru asks Kana what Hina is talking about, and she explains to him that in Okinawa, when someone is surprised, their soul or mabui falls from their body and they lose all of their energy. To bring back the energy, a shaman named Yuri emerges and says the magic words Mabia Mabia Urikuyo, and makes the soul fall back into the body, reviving the person's energy. Kana tells Teru that Okinawan grandmas usually say these things to keep the tradition alive, and that her grandma still does it for her. The child throws the cup of water and starts to cry again, saying that he is going to find his mother, but Hina tells the child that there is no hurry to move around. She adds that Okinawa is a small island and her grandmother used to tell her that there is no word for goodbye in the Okinawan dialect. This is because no matter how far someone is from you, if they are in Okinawa, you will end up seeing them again. Kana translates the words of Hina to Teru and it impresses him, but their small talk is soon interrupted by the little child's mother. As the child holds the hand of his mother, he tells Hina that he cannot understand what she said and asks her to repeat it. Kana explains to Teru that the new generation in Okinawa doesn't speak Uchina-gochi, and that is why it is hard for them to understand the language as well. Meanwhile, Hina explains to the child again and adds that old people do not say goodbye to each other, they rather say see you around, or we will see each other in the afterlife. The trio then starts walking and Hina tells them that the child did not want to leave her. As she hums in happiness, Teru walks ahead with his eyes closed. A bull comes in front of him and Hina shouts at Teru to move away. Shocked by the sudden commotion, he moves aside, while the man carrying the bull apologizes and leaves. Teru asks the girls why the bull is walking around freely and Hina tells him that the season of bullfighting is around the corner since the weather is getting warmer. She tells him that the bull is being taken to the beach for the practice of the upcoming match and she reminds him to ensure he doesn't forget to clean up his bull's waste. She then recalls how surprised Teru was after seeing the bull and decides to pat his back like she did to the child. Teru thinks that she will hug him and pat his back slightly, but instead, she makes him turn his back to her and pat his back roughly. Upon seeing his shock, she tells him that the light pats are for the kids and the adults need the pats to be hard to call their energy back. This makes Teru feel more surprised than the bull and his heart skips a beat. In school, a boy inquires from Teru if he ever had sada andagi, and Teru asks what it is. This shocks everyone as sada andagi is a traditional snack and is loved by everyone in Okinawa. It is a doughy snack made of cake flour, baking powder, and eggs, and is then shaped into small balls and fried in oil. He gets excited and says that he would love to try some, making Iso, one of his class fellows, say that he will have his grandma make some for him. Wadie says that her grandma used to work in Nakama Market, so she will ask her grandma to make this snack for him. Another class fellow, Tensuki, jumps in and says that he will make this snack for Teru. Gradually, all the students say that they will bring sada andagi for him, and he is confused as to why everyone is being so nice to him. Seeing his dumbfounded state, Hina explains to him that he's under the famous kami-kami attack of Uchina-gochi. In Okinawa, people love to make outsiders feel welcome and show their love by showering them with food that the outsiders have not tried before. It is like your grandma stuffing you up with your favorite food, and this practice is common because they want outsiders to know that they are loving and welcoming people. Hina asks Kana to make sada andagi since she makes them the best and requests Kana to get some for her as well. The next morning, everyone in the class attacks Teru with sada andagi, and he becomes really happy when he sees that Hina has also brought him some that have been specially made by her grandmother. As the class surrounds him, Kana comes in and looks down thinking about how she will give him the ones she made. She hides the pack behind her and leaves the class confused as everyone starts calling for her. She sits outside the class and scolds herself for being so nervous and not telling him that she has got the snacks made especially for him. As she is about to leave, Teru stops her and asks if she is fine since she looked disturbed in class earlier. She realizes that he is worried about her and has come to ask her about her well-being, making her feel happy. She tells him that she is fine and is about to leave, but Hina joins them and Kana stops. She decides to give him the sada andagi, and Teru tells her that she was late to the kami attack. The three then sit together and enjoy their snacks. However, they are soon interrupted by people from other classes asking if he is Teru, the guy who had not tried sada andagi. People start to flood around him, from other schools as well, and the girls become tense thinking how Teru will react to so many people surrounding him and stuffing his mouth with the snacks. Hina is hiding behind a wall staring at a guy standing at the beach, while Teru stands a few miles away wondering what is Hina looking at. Kana, who is standing behind Teru, asks Teru what he is doing and asks her about Hina. Kana informs him that Hina loves Ojizan, an old man or uncle in Japan, and Teru looks at her in shock thinking, why would Hina love an uncle? However, he calms himself down by thinking that Kana might mean that Hina likes him and does not love him. Suddenly, Hina turns around and asks Kana why she would tell Teru about her likeness to Ojizan. Teru looks at her with eyes wide open while Kana asks her if she is not supposed to tell him since Hina talks about it all day, and it is quite obvious. Hina tells Kana that she feels embarrassed when someone tells her that she talks about it all day. Her words make Teru believe that she loves Ojizan, and he becomes sad thinking that he stands no chance against him. The trio then moves ahead towards the beach and Hina keeps poking Kana for revealing her secret. Kana tells her that she doesn't like Ojizan much and Hina asks her the reason while explaining why she likes them. Teru starts to feel miserable and silently pleads with Hina to stop talking about it as he cannot hear the girl of his dreams talk about a man she loves. As Hina explains the reasons behind her likeness to Ojizin, Teru for the first time feels lucky for not being able to comprehend her dialect. Hina tells Kana that she loves Kisu and Teru thinks she is talking about kissing, which makes him feel even sadder. However, Kana replies to Hina saying that she loves Kisu as well and finds them delicious. This catches Teru's attention as he thinks that delicious is a word that is used for something that one can eat and not for kisses. Hina suddenly shouts and asks them to look at the guy as he puts the fishing net in the sea. As they gather around him, he pulls the net out and collects a lot of fish, making Hina cheer up. The guy asks about Teru and Kana tells him that he is a friend from school, and Teru introduces himself thinking that the guy looks younger than an Ojizin. The guy then tells Teru to get as many fish as he wants and Teru thanks him. However, their talk is soon interrupted by Hina, who asks the guy if he has collected any Ojizin. Teru gets shocked thinking, why would a guy catch old men from the sea, while the guy tells Hina that it is not the time of the year for Ojizins to appear. Hina claims that she was hiding so her commotion or voice wouldn't disturb Ojizin, and Teru realizes that in the Okinawan dialect, Ojizin is the name for a fish and not for old people. Kana tells Hina that she must be fond of Ojizins and she tells her that she is, but people might call her a glutton if she talks about it a lot. The guy claims that he did catch some Kisu, and Teru realizes that Kisu is also the name of a fish that sits on the ground with his face in his hands. The guy sits in front of him and offers him a kiss as the girls wonder what happened to him. Kana then introduces that the guy is her big brother, and the scene then shifts to the next day when Teru's class gathers for a beach party. Teru reaches there before everyone else and walks around complimenting the blue skies, white sandy beach, and the emerald green sea. He wears his shirt and gets excited to learn to swim from his classmates. Hina comes to the beach as well along with a carton of sampan tea, and Teru offers her help but gets distracted by how cute Hina looks in her regular clothes. Their attention then shifts to Kana, who is being cautioned by her brother to take care of her minerals and stay hydrated. Teru approaches them telling her brother that they will take care of her and he needs not worry. After her brother leaves them, they start to set up their umbrella on the beach, making Teru wonder why everyone else is late. Hina explains to him the concept of Uchina time, which means that Okinawan people usually leave for their social gatherings at the time when they are supposed to meet and arrive late at the venue. Hina begs Teru to hate Uchina time, but not to hate Okinawan people, and even though she sounds desperate, he still finds her cute. Everyone gathers at the beach around 3:30 and announces their arrival to the three of them. The classmates get together and start grilling and eating meat. Once done, Teru shouts in excitement thinking that it is time for a good swim and starts to take off his shirt, but everyone stops him. As everyone laughs, he looks around and sees more than the usual amount of old people on the beach. Unlike the mainland beach parties, which are for a more hip and happening crowd, Okinawan beach parties are for everyone to enjoy. They have more formal parties at the beach to welcome new employees or get together as a class. However, Teru is unaware of these facts and still thinks that swimming is a part of the party, but is only stopped because of the old people around them. They continue the day by playing cards, taking breaks here and there, and then calling it a day. Teru asks them if they are not going to swim, adding that coming to the beach and not swimming seems like a waste of their trip. Everyone laughs and Hina explains to him that the sea is to be looked at and not to swim. She further says something in Buchinagochi, but Teru fails to understand. So Kana comes forward and tells him that people do not like to swim there as they feel mucha after swimming. He asks what mucha means, and everyone gets shocked upon realizing that mucha is not a common word in standard Japanese. One of the classmates, hiding his disappointment, tells him that it means sticky, while another changes the topic and begins to talk about fish. Afterward, everyone decides to leave and continues to walk in silence while Teru asks them the reason behind their silence. The next day at school, Kana leaves early and Teru has to return home alone with Hina. He wonders if he will be able to understand her, but stays positive and decides to ask her out since the weather seems nice. He calls her, and just when he is about to ask her, the weather changes and it suddenly starts to rain. He exclaims that the weather forecast said it won't be raining today, but Hina tells him that the Okinawan weather forecast is completely useless. He stops Hina from saying anything bad about the forecasters, but he is unaware that in Okinawa sudden rainstorms are quite common, and they often leave as soon as they come at times. Teru thinks that Hina does not have an umbrella while he has one, which means they will have to share one. He relates it to a romantic scene in mangas, thinking that once both of them are under the umbrella, Hina will notice Teru's one shoulder getting wet from rain and will know that he cares for her. In his train of thought, he tells himself that he is not getting his hopes, but upon coming back to reality, he realizes that Hina has started walking and is soaking in rain. He yells at her to stop since he has got an umbrella, but looks around to find out that no one is carrying an umbrella. In Okinawa, people do not carry umbrellas because they don't care about getting wet. The rains are quite common and the winds are too harsh for them to handle umbrellas. As the dude starts to walk, Teru offers an umbrella to Hina, but the rain suddenly stops. The The weather keeps switching and a rainbow appears in the sky, since rainbows are quite common in Okinawa as compared to the mainland due to the rain falling alongside the sun. They get happy after seeing the rainbow, but Teru notices that Hina's clothes are getting messy and offers her his umbrella. She denies it at first, but then looks at herself and hugs herself since the white uniform shirt has become transparent. He tells her to take the umbrella, but she says something in Ukinabuchi and runs away. Later, he searches up what she said and finds out that she told him he did not have to tell her that her clothes were messy as it made her feel embarrassed. He stops by the sea and finds Kana sitting there on a bench. Upon going near, he asks what she is doing there and she points at Hina and Kana's siblings playing together. He looks at them and tells Kana that stopping by the sea while going home after school feels good. He then reminds her that the bench she is sitting on is the bench they met at in spring break for the first time. Upon hearing this, Hina pops out of nowhere and looks at them in shock as she thought they met them at the school for the first time. Teru looks at her and realizes that she is all wet and her clothes are all messy. He asks her if she tripped in the sea and the scene then shifts to the past. It was a hot day in Okinawa and on the other hand it was snowing in Tokyo. Teru had just landed from Tokyo and was sitting on a bench with his luggage put right beside him. He was watching the weather forecast on his phone feeling sad as he felt extremely hot in Okinawa and held a copy of Shonen Jump in his other hand. A pair of kids interrupted asking how he had this week's copy of Shonen Jump since it was to be released on Tuesday in Okinawa and it was only Monday. They asked him if he was from the future and he looked at them in shock. However, Kana stopped the kids before they could make any more assumptions and told them that Shonen Jump was released on Monday in the mainland and since he has come from the mainland, he has a copy of it. This was because Shonen Jump was shipped from mainland to Okinawa and it took a day to reach there. Furthermore, delays occurred because of Okinawa's infamous sudden weather shifts. The kids named Suzu and Naoya started crying saying that it was unfair. Upon seeing them cry, he offered them his copy since he was already done reading it. The kids sat by the ocean to read it while Kana and Teru talked to each other. He told her that he just landed and come to see the ocean since he had never seen it before and was thinking of going for a swim. However, a strong wind blew and Kana's cap flew towards the ocean. Kana ran after it, but Teru was faster and jumped into the ocean to catch it. At first, he managed to catch the cap without tripping, but as soon as he showed it to them, his feet tripped and he fell into the ocean, making himself and the cap wet. As he came out of the ocean, kids told him that Kana couldn't swim, making Kana feel embarrassed, and she tried to stop them. But before she could say anything, Teru told them that he couldn't swim either and just went there to get the cap, even though it scared him a lot. This impresses Kana, but her train of thought is soon broken down as the kids laugh at the way Teru's legs shake in fear. The scene then shifts back to the present where Hina falls to the ground and cries at the fact that people on the mainland get to read Shonen Jump before the people of Okinawa. Teru is clicking pictures of a shizu with Hina and Kana standing behind him. Hina shouts at him, asking why he is clicking so many pictures, and he sheepishly tells her that they are a rare sight for him. He then turns around to thank an old man who let him click the pictures. Upon seeing the old man, Kana wonders how he let Teru take pictures of Shisa and is impressed by Teru's kindness. Later, Hina looks through Teru's photo album on his phone and finds many Shisas photographed in it. He shows them a picture of a train in Tokyo saying that this is where he lives and Hina peeks in from the side. Upon seeing the picture, the girls are shocked to find trains and road crossings since it is something they have only seen in movies. Teru then tells them that Shizas have very cute faces and the girls look at him weirdly since in Okinawa people do not think about whether Shizas are cute or not. However, in Okinawan dialect, people who are unattractive are called Shisa face. He looks at them, asking if they do not find Shizas attractive, and Hina asks him if he knows why Shizas are kept outside the houses. He says that it is for decoration, but Hina informs him that the right one, who is a male Shiha, has an open mouth so that it doesn't let Majimon or bad spirits enter inside the home, while Kana tells him that the left Shiza, which is a female, keeps its mouth tightly closed to keep the blessings from running out of the house. As they start to move, Hina tells him that a long time ago, Shizas would be made from the material that was left over while making roofers of the house. She adds that no one knew what a Shiza would look like until a house was built, which is why some Shizas are attractive while others look weird or even scary. This newly found information excites Teru and he clicks even more pictures of Shizas around him while saying that even Shizas have their history. Upon seeing him happy, Hina says that she feels really happy about Teru building up a liking for Okinawa. However, she tells him that he needs to have more information on the history of Shisa and starts her unstoppable chatter. Kana translates her words to Teru and tells him that a long time ago people only had one Shisa outside their house. The next day at school the bell rings, indicating that it is time for a lunch break, and all the students wonder what they'll have for lunch. Hina, who is sitting beside Teru, stretches their bodies and two class fellows come near Teru to ask if he would like to go to the school store. In the meantime, girls named Izumi and Yetoe come live through the school's broadcast club and announce that they are going to play some songs. They then announce the name of the first song, Tushin Doi, and everyone stops in their places. As soon as the song starts to play, everyone begins to dance, making Teru wonder what suddenly happened to them. So much has already occurred to him in Okinawa that he remains unfazed by the sudden dance and tries to figure out the reason behind the dance. He concludes that it is because of the folk song, but forgets the name of the song only for Kana to remind him that it is Tushin Doi, and people are performing kachashi, which is also a type of dance. He looks at Kana and asks why she is not stopping her dance, and she tells him that Okinawans cannot stop themselves from performing kachashi when Tushin Doi is played. This is their folk dance, and although it is not taught in schools, Okinawans can still dance to it at occasions like weddings, family gatherings, and even elections. He wonders how they can do it without being taught, and the kids at school tell him that they just know it, maybe because of genetics. However, Teru gets a flashback of his grandpa teaching him the dance at a family gathering while he was in preschool. One classmate says that she learned it from an old lady in China Shoten. Another says that he learned it from an old man at a festival, while Hina adds that one might not remember where they learned it from, but one does remember how it is performed. She adds that the dance is quite common in Okinawans. One might learn it from their grandparents, and their grandparents might have learned it from theirs. Furthermore, she says that one day it is you who becomes a teacher. If you ever have a child with a girl from Okinawa, then you will have to teach kachashi to those kids. Teru suddenly imagines Hina holding their child and his head starts to spin. On the other hand, a thought pops into Hina's mind about Teru's grandchild asking him to teach him kachashi and Teru telling him that he does not know how to perform it. She shouts at Teru that her grandchildren are in danger and begins to teach him the dance. As Teru struggles with letting his body loose, Hina tells him that Kana is good at it and shouts at Kana to teach him. Kana denies the request, making Teru think that he is a gone case, while she turns around and starts imagining a future family with Teru. The kachashi is all about sharing happiness and joy, and the class seems to be achieving their goal in the best way possible. After school, the class plans to go out. Everyone hides behind a wall, while Hina covers her head and looks out to check if anyone has seen them, but only sees the school sweeper brushing the floors. She tells everyone that they will be using the back gate, and Teru asks her why they need to hide. She replies to him that the parlor they are planning to go to is very naughty, and they will have to be discreet about it. Upon reaching there, he realizes that the parlor is not what he imagined it to be. He asks his classmates what this place is about, and they tell him that it sells food. Teru looks at them with his eyes wide open and asks what is naughty about selling food. As an answer to his question, Hina says that they do not want their teachers to know that they are having snacks after school. A parlor in Okinawa is basically a food place that sells all the traditional food like sada andagi, taco rice, zenzai, and sokisaba. Most of their classmates order taco rice, some order sokisaba, and Teru wonders what he will order. He thinks about copying others since he is not familiar with the menu, but gets shocked when he hears Hina order zenzai in the hot weather. However, when their menu arrives, Teru realizes that zenzai has shaved ice in it and asks why their zenzai looks like this and not like a soup. They tell him that zenzai in Okinawa is shaved ice, and its hot form is called hot zenzai there. Upon taking the first bite of her zenzai, Hina moves to heaven and cannot help but talk non-stop about it. As she starts to speak in Okinawan dialect, Teru's classmate starts to translate for him. Hina says that it is yummy, and as Kana is about to translate, the classmate beats her to eat, and she looks down sadly. Again, Hina says that Teru should try more traditional food, but before Kana can translate, the classmate does. This commotion does not go unnoticed by Kana's friend, who is sitting right beside her. 3 out of 6 classmates decide to go and get something to drink, leaving behind Kana, Hina, and Teru. However, the one who noticed Kana's sad face earlier comes back saying that she left her wallet behind. Upon coming back, she notices that Kana is translating what Hina is saying to Teru and is finding ways to get closer. This makes her gasp, and she sits beside Kana while Hina starts to speak. The girl reminds Kana that she needs to translate for Teru, and as Kana does, Kana realizes that her friend has guessed her feelings for Teru. Their classmates return with the drinks and ask what they all were talking about, to which the girl replies that they were talking about something sweet, making Kana put her face in her hands in shyness. Hina adds that they were talking about zenzai and says that it is very good in summer, but her classmates, saying that she likes it all year round. A few days later, a festival named Uruma City Aiza Festival begins in Okinawa. All the classmates dance at the festival, play drums, and even sing songs. This festival is a summer tradition, and during this festival, Iza is performed, which is a traditional Okinawan dance, and drums are played all around the town. Teru looks at the festivities and gets excited about the festival, while Kana's friend teases her upon seeing Teru. Teru feels grateful for being there and thinks about the time when he was invited by a classmate who told her that Gashikawa Youth Association would be performing Iza. At that time, he mistook Iza for Acer and asked if it was something including monitors. He says that although he had no idea what the event was about at that time, he still accepted the invitations and came. He then looks around himself and realizes that there are a lot of couples around him. He hopes that he will come with Hina someday and imagines her wearing traditional Japanese attire and walking through the festival with him. However, his chain of thoughts is broken by the sudden realization that he never got the courage to tell Hina that he likes her. He stops himself from getting deeper and tries to focus on the festival ahead of him. He finds Kana dancing, but what shakes him is Hina dressed differently from everybody with white paint and magic marker all around her face. He wonders why she is dressed up like that as she goes to meet the audience. Teru concludes that Hina is not good at dance, so she has decided to do something other than dancing. But Suzu, along with Naoya, tells him that it is not so and asks him to focus on Hina. They see that she is dancing in front of a crowd and is making them excited. Teru says that Hina's job is to make the festival more fun, but Suze tells him that is not all and says she is playing the role of Chandara. Chandara is the busiest among all the performers as she has to keep the lines tidy, help the performers stay hydrated, wipe down the performers, start the song and maintain the rhythm of the drums, help the performers by picking up their fallen drumsticks, and lastly engage the audience. As the tree of novices are moving around, Suzu says that Hina is the floor master of the festival and adds that one cannot be floor master until they are good at seeing things. This reminds Teru of his first day at school and he was all alone and Hina approached him and welcomed him to the class. He thinks of all the times she has made him feel welcome and thinks that he never really thanked her. As the Gashikoa Youth Association's performance ends, the crowd cheers for them and the hosts announce another performance. Teru searches for Hina and finds her sitting away from the crowd and calls for her. She looks at him and asks how did she perform, to which he replies that she was great. He thanks her for her help from the first day of school and wonders if that was all he wanted to say. He stops her from leaving but thinks if he should tell her about what he feels or let things go the way they are going. Afterward, Teru tries to gather some nerves and is about to tell Hina that he has feelings for her. The festival buzzes with energy as lights and music fill the air, but Teru struggles to focus. His problem isn't nerves around Hina, it's her makeup. The girl wears thick black and white makeup traditional to their island, but the unfamiliar sight makes Teru choke with laughter. She proudly tells him about festival goers asking to take pictures with her. Teru wants to be honest but decides against it, choosing instead to hide his amusement while she beams with pride. Hina drags Teru toward the stage. She insists they won't miss one of her favorite parts of the event, the grand finale. The festival host takes the microphone and invites everyone to join the kachashi, a traditional Okinawan dance. Teru stays at the back, watching as the crowd flocks near the stage and starts dancing. The energy amazes him, and he can't help but admire how everyone knows the steps by heart. Kana, who also happens to be nearby, notices him lingering and approaches. She sees his hesitation and desire to join the others, so she asks him if he plans to dance, but he admits he's not much of a dancer. Despite his reluctance, he shares his admiration for the island, saying how much he appreciates Okinawa's dedication to its traditions. The past 4 months were an eye-opener for him. Kana stands beside him, her eyes fixed on the lively crowd as she mentions how much there is to do since celebrations are almost weekly during this time of the year. Teru watches her and realizes how deeply she loves her home since she knows so much about her island. Kana gathers her courage and asks how he's adjusting to life in Okinawa. Teru responds with enthusiasm, saying he's come to enjoy the island more, thanks to her help, citing that he enjoys learning new things from her every day since he arrived. She blushes at his words but quickly masks her feelings by adding that she enjoys talking to him too, explaining how much she has learned about the mainland through their conversations. He appreciates her compliment, feeling glad he has been able to help her in some way since he feels like always troubles her since he always turns to her for translations. Kana then admits she enjoys translating the dialect for him, but Teru assumes it's simply her enthusiasm for sharing Okinawan dialect and culture. Kana hesitates before confessing that she translates not because it's her duty, but because it gives her an excuse to talk to him. Teru, oblivious to her feelings, misinterprets her words again, thinking she simply wants him to better understand the island, admitting he is ignorant to almost everything in Okinawa. He tells Kana she's amazing, but she misreads his kind words as a declaration of shared feelings. Her heart races as she lowers her gaze, overwhelmed with emotion. She apologizes for troubling him with her confession, but Teru assures her that she hasn't. He tells her he feels the same way, not realizing she has taken his words romantically. Kana's heartbeat pounds in her chest, not believing that her crush feels the same way. Suddenly, she feels pressure and wonders what direction their relationship will take. Suddenly, Teru announces that he wants to get more hands-on with Okinawan culture. Kana, flustered by his wording, misinterprets his intentions and panics, thinking he's implying something inappropriate. As Teru enthusiastically explains that he's excited to try something he's never done before, Kana takes a step back. She nervously tells him she has no experience in the matter and insists it's too soon. Teru, oblivious to her misunderstanding, flashes her a boyish smile. He thinks she's joking, especially since she knows so much about Okinawan culture. Realization suddenly dawns on Kana. She pieces together their conversation and recognizes that they've been talking about completely different things. While she feels slightly relieved, a tinge of disappointment lingers. Her earlier confession clearly didn't reach Teru the way she had hoped. Teru then takes a step closer to the stage, determined and eager. He declares that he wants to give his best effort and experience everything firsthand. Turning back to Kana, he nervously asks her to teach him how to dance the kachashi. As the two join the lively crowd near the stage, people start to notice them. The festival goers look on with fondness, sensing that their relationship is steadily growing stronger. Despite Teru's awkward, uncoordinated movements and Kana's energetic and precise steps, the pair fits perfectly into the vibrant rhythm of the festival. The next morning greets Okinawa with a bright sun and sea breeze. Hina proudly shows off her whistling skills to Teru, who has been attempting to learn since hearing her during Yaisa. Hina confidently promises to teach him at the beach, speaking in her dialect and leaving Teru confused as he still struggles to grasp the language. Kana translates for him, and he eagerly accepts the promise of lessons. Even Suzu and Naoya tag along, finally hoping to learn the Okinawa whistle. The group heads to the beach, where Hina explains that the open air means no one will mind them being loud. She fondly recounts how she and Kana learned to whistle from someone at the very same beach. Inspired by the story and the sea breeze, Teru feels confident he can whistle too. However, his attempts only produce awkward blowing sounds. Hina tries to teach him with exaggerated gestures and instructions in her dialect, but her efforts only confuse him further. Even Suzu and Naoya chime in, complaining that she's a terrible teacher, making Teru feel slightly relieved that the problem wasn't the dialect. Hina is just bad at this. Realizing the truth, Hina dramatically shouts at the sea in despair. Ye, noticing the struggle, suggests that Kana take over the lesson, and suddenly Hina recovers from her disheartened state to vouch that Kana has a good whistle and is the better teacher among the two of them. Kana hesitates, clearly uncomfortable with the attention, but her sister Suzu begins to throw a tantrum and threatens to reveal her secrets unless she agrees to teach them. Backed into a corner, Kana reluctantly agrees to teach the group. Kana begins her lesson on whistling by instructing everyone that using 2 index fingers is easier than the common single finger method, and she recommends it when starting out. She explains that the position of the tongue is the most critical part of producing the sound, and to demonstrate, she opens her mouth to show them the proper placement. As she does, the kids in Teru position themselves directly in front of her and peer straight into her mouth. She notices Teru staring intently at her tongue, causing her to break into a nervous sweat and awkwardly close her tongue in the realization that she is doing something that can be counted as embarrassing in front of the person you love. Ye, standing at the back, tries hard to hide her laughter. Kana looks over and realizes this was a setup all along, a playful trap orchestrated by Ye to put her into an awkward situation with her crush. The children demanded that she demonstrate the tongue position again since Kana had shut her mouth too soon when she got embarrassed. Trapped by the persistence of the group, she reluctantly continues the lesson, struggling to keep her composure as her nerves threaten to overwhelm her. After several attempts and much trial and error, the children and Teru finally manage to produce faint whistling sounds. While their whistles aren't as sharp or clear as Hina's, Teru is thrilled to have succeeded. He beams with pride at his small victory, while Kana, utterly worn out from teaching and her embarrassment, exhales deeply in relief and congratulates him. As the commotion settles, Kana takes a moment to watch the group fondly. Hina, Suzu, Naoya, and Teru whistle enthusiastically among themselves, happy that they can create the piercing noise as a group. They call Kana over, urging her to join them, and she eventually gives in and leaves her seat next to Ye, join the group and whistle together. 8 years earlier, a younger Hina and Kana had walked along the very same beach when a sharp, piercing whistle caught their attention. They spot a man known in the area for his exceptional whistling skills, practicing near the bay, surrounded by children. Kana stared at the man in awe, silently wishing she could make such a beautiful sound herself. Noticing Kana's dilemma and shyness, Hina grabbed her hand and suggested they ask the man to teach them. Despite Kana's hesitation, Hina pulled her along and together they approached the man. He kindly shared his techniques, inspiring the two girls to practice tirelessly every day. A week passed, but Hina and Kana could only manage airy, hollow noises. Their struggles didn't go unnoticed. 2 boys from the island teased them, mocking their inability to whistle even after receiving instructions. The ridicule struck a nerve in Kana, silencing her and breaking her spirit. The boy who threw the insult sensed that he managed to get through Kana and invited them to go bug catching. However, Hina refused to let the insult go and argued with the boys, demanding they take back their words. Kana, however, stopped her, saying she didn't want to practice anymore. Sensing how deeply the teasing had affected Kana, Hina shifted gears and made a heartfelt promise. She vowed to practice with Kana until they could whistle together, even if it took until they were old grandmothers. As the boys left, Kana broke down, tears streaming as she confessed how much she wanted to whistle with Hina. Moved by her words, Hina hugged Kana tightly and reassured her that they would learn how to whistle together. After the teasing incident, Kana and Hina went back to the man on the beach, eager to perfect their whistling skills. They asked him for more tricks and tips, determined to improve. From that day forward, they practiced every chance they got, no matter where they were. Sometimes the frustration was too much for Kana, and she would cry, overwhelmed by how little progress they seemed to make. But Hina was always there to remind her that they would reach their goal together. No matter how long it took, Hina promised she would stay by her side. Then one day, it finally happened. The girls, practicing side by side, both produced a clear, sharp whistle at the same time. The sound rang and both girls paused, stunned by what they had just done. Smiles spread across their faces as the realization set in. They had finally done it. They had learned how to whistle. In celebration, they jumped up and down, holding hands, laughing and cheering together for finally achieving what they had worked so hard for. Energized by their success, they decided to show the boys who had teased them. They called them out, eager to prove they had mastered the whistle. When the boys arrived at the beach, they were stunned. They never expected the girls to actually succeed. Haru, the boy who had teased them the most, opened his mouth to throw another insult, but words failed him. His skeptical friend, tired of Haru's arrogance, stepped in and told the girls that Haru couldn't even whistle himself. He had no right to insult them. Haru, now embarrassed, began to apologize, but Hina, with a playful smile, took control of the situation. She offered to teach the boys how to whistle, proudly declaring that Kana was the better teacher. If they wanted to learn, they should start with her. In the present, Kana sat down, worn out but feeling nostalgic. She smiled to herself, remembering the promise she made with Hina all those years ago, that they would practice together, even if they grew old and gray. Hina, noticing the smile, sat beside her and curiously asked what was on Kana's mind. When Kana admitted she was thinking about that memory from when they learned to whistle, Hina couldn't help but tease her, recalling how cute she had looked when she cried. The two bickered lightly, their fondness for each other evident in their playful exchange. Nearby, their family and friends watched with warm smiles, enjoying the bond between them. 4 months into his life in Okinawa, Teru is settling in well, but the Okinawan dialect still trips him up. One of his more embarrassing mix-ups happens on the last day of the first semester. A classmate casually announces he's heading to the bathroom, and Teru, thinking he's being invited along, follows him without hesitation. Apparently, this kind of misunderstanding is common for newcomers. In Okinawa, when someone says, "Let's do something," they actually mean, "I'll be doing something." As the school day winds down, excitement fills the air. Students can't wait to enjoy their free time, but first they need to tidy up their classrooms. While dusting the chalkboard, Teru accidentally inhales some chalk dust and sneezes. Without thinking, Kana fondly blurts out, "Kusukiya." The moment the words leave her mouth, she freezes, her face turning bright red as she turns around, hoping to mask her embarrassment. Teru finds the phrase oddly cute and asks what it means. Before Kana can respond, Ye bluntly tells him that it's just a swear word. While it is technically a curse, the real meaning is much deeper. Okinawans say it to scare off evil spirits that might try to steal someone's soul after they sneeze. Kana, realizing the misunderstanding, rushes to explain, hoping Teru doesn't take it the wrong way or think badly of her. As the sun begins to set, the group leaves school and chats about urban legends and ghost stories. Hina insists that some scary stories have real-life origins and warns Teru that the Majiman, Okinawan spirits, could actually exist while trying to make herself look like a ghost through her movements. Teru finds this side of Hina adorable, even though she's trying to scare him. Switching tactics, Hina points out that Okinawans take spirits very seriously. The town is full of protective statues and structures designed to keep Majiman at bay. As she lists off various Majiman busters, Teru starts noticing strange signs plastered on walls all over town. To his amazement, he learns that these two serve as spirit deterrents, specifically to stop Majiman from rushing around. He holds back from calling Okinawans superstitious, but Kana and Hana see right through him. Hina, determined to prove a point, shares a family story. One of the old uncles in the town never believed in the supernatural until his grandson was born. Suddenly, he started following every tradition, placing protective charms around his house to keep spirits away from his family. She believes it's because he suddenly wishes the new member of the family to stay safe. With a knowing smile, Hina claims she also has someone she wishes to keep safe, so she plucks a blade of grass, twists it into a simple charm, and hands it to Teru, claiming it will protect him from the Majiman. Hina's gift turns out to be a san, a charm made from susupi grass. In Okinawan tradition, grandmothers often give these to their grandchildren to ward off spirits and bring protection. Hina, Kana, and Teru eventually part ways, and Kana stares longingly at Teru. As summer break stretches on, Kana finds herself restless. Without school, she has fewer chances to see Teru and the days feel long and uneventful. She considers inviting him out by sending him a message, but the mere thought of asking him on a date flusters her. Deciding it's best to not think of Teru and enjoy her summer, she resolves to go on a shopping trip alone to keep her mind off things. While waiting at the bus stop, Kana hears someone call out her name. She turns to see Teru looking genuinely happy to run into a familiar face. Her heart skips a beat. After an entire week without seeing him, she suddenly finds herself at a loss for words. Just then, the bus arrives right on time, and Kana visibly reacts with surprise, confusing Teru. In places like Tokyo, punctual buses are normal, but in Okinawa, they normally tend to be an hour late. She suddenly feels down, cursing her luck for the bus being on time, when she finally has the chance to chat with Teru. Noticing her disappointment, Teru asks what's wrong, and Kana absent-mindedly answers in her usual dialect, mentioning she's going shopping. She forgets that Teru often misinterprets Okinawan phrasing, so when she hears his excited voice beside her, she is confused and shocked to find him sitting right next to her, even offering her snacks for the trip. Her initial panic fades when she recognizes the warm feeling bubbling in her chest. The thought of spending the afternoon with Teru makes her heart race. Upon arriving at the mall, Kana momentarily loses sight of him due to her being absent-minded. When she finally spots him again, he's already wearing a newly purchased shirt, which he believes is a Hawaiian shirt. But Kana corrects him, telling him that it's actually karaoke wear, a formal shirt worn by office workers in Okinawa. To him, it looks no different from a Hawaiian shirt, so he wonders what the difference is. Kana explains that the difference lies in the patterns. The ones with designs only on one side are more formal, while the ones with designs all over are less formal, so people tend to mistake the latter one as Hawaiian-made. Curious, Teru grabs more shirts, holding them up one by one. Each time, Kana confidently declares them to be karaoke wear, feeling proud of her knowledge, until a shopkeeper overhears and apologizes because the last shirt in Teru's hands is, in fact, an actual Hawaiian shirt that accidentally got mixed into their display. Kana's face turns into disbelief as she got it wrong, then slumps in embarrassment. It turns out the only clear difference between a Hawaiian shirt and karaoke wear is that the latter is made in Okinawa. The storekeeper assumes Teru and Kana are a couple and suggests they buy a matching pair of the shirt Teru purchased. While Teru immediately tries to clarify that they are just friends, Kana finds herself giddy at the thought of people seeing them as a couple. The idea flusters her so much that she panics, her face turning red. As he turns to Kana, she tries to excuse herself but slips into her dialect again, unintentionally prompting Teru to follow her. When she notices Teru has been following her, she realizes that he has once again misunderstood her. She finally figures out that Teru must have fallen victim to the let's do something problem. They take a break at a cafe, and Kana finally explains the misunderstanding that has caused Teru's repeated mistakes. Okinawans often say, let's go, when they mean they will be doing something alone. Since no one had ever pointed out the language difference to him before, he had unknowingly followed people around several times. Teru understands his mistake, finally realizing why his friend was upset at him when he followed his friend to the bathroom. Kana feels bad for not realizing it earlier and taking advantage of his ignorance to spend the day with him. But Teru says that he is actually happy about the mix-up since it gave him a chance to hang out with her. The confession leaves Kana flustered, her face warming up as Teru realizes he may have sounded a bit selfish. They both begin to panic as Teru tries to explain his words. Hoping to shift the mood, Kana suggests they explore the mall a little longer, pointing out a music event in one part of the mall. They browse more stores, look for more clothes to buy, and even stop by the arcade. Kana watches as Teru eagerly attempts the crane game, and they even try their hands at the taiko drum game. The day turns out more exciting than Kana had expected, and before they know it, the sun begins to set. On the bus ride home, both feel satisfied with their shopping, each holding a bag filled with items. Teru, especially, is excited about the discount coupon he managed to snag from a store, looking forward to another shopping trip. As the ride continues, Kana hesitates before shyly suggesting they go to the mall together again sometime. However, Teru speaks at the same time, saying the exact same thing. They laugh at the awkward timing but quickly look away, unsure if the other really meant it or if it was just another language mix-up. Summer continues to bring unexpected moments. Teru joins a calisthenics event at City Hall, only to find himself surrounded by eager children who are interested in having someone from the mainland join them. The group excitedly tugs at his shirt, showing off what they know, and asking him things that they believe people from outside Okinawa get to experience. He notices that many of them begin their sentences with a distinct sound, which he finds oddly charming. Hime explains that children in their town use the sound to indicate they are listening, confirming, or thinking, and even admits that it's a habit she finds extremely adorable as well. As he watches the kids chatter, he realizes Suzu has the same habit. He had never paid much attention to it before, but now it stands out. Out of nowhere, Hina's grandmother arrives and Hina rushes over, hugging her tightly. As she enthusiastically introduces her grandmother, Teru notices that Hina has unconsciously started making the same sounds as the children. It dawns on him that she must have had the habit as a child and wasn't even aware she had slipped back into it. Teru bows respectfully, introducing himself to Sachiko, Hina's grandmother. As he raises his head, Sachiko immediately begins to speak in rapid Ochinaguchi dialect. Teru, however, doesn't catch a single thing. With the group gathered, they prepared for the morning calisthenics. A radio is switched on, broadcasting the routine's instructions. While the children follow along effortlessly, Teru finds himself struggling. To his horror, the instructions are in Uchinagochi, making it difficult for him to understand. At the end of the session, Hina begins stamping the kids' attendance cards as they eagerly line up. Teru lingers at the back. He remembers collecting stamps as a child for small prizes, usually candy, but now as a high schooler, it feels a little embarrassing since he finds himself too old. He debates whether or not to get his cards stamped when he overhears a boy excitedly telling another that collecting 7 stamps earns them a special treat, Keitan-san's famous Sada Andeji. Teru makes up his mind and vows to collect every stamp, assuming the treat is actually made by his crush, Hina. Determined, he commits to attending every session, enduring the sweltering heat, the occasional rain, and even mornings when he barely gets any sleep. The promise of freshly made Sada Andeji keeps him motivated. On the 7th day, the children, including Teru, excitedly gather, eager to receive their reward. As the final exercise ends, they submit their completed cards, eyes sparkling with anticipation. Hina reveals a large platter of golden Sada Andeji, the sight alone making their mouths water. To Teru's surprise, Hina hands him the biggest one as a thank you for helping out during the sessions. Before he can protest, she grins mischievously and moves to feed him. Ignoring his protests, she shoves the pastry into his mouth, leaving him no choice but to accept it. Hina proudly declares that her grandmother's Sada Andeji is the best in the world. At the mention of Kian-san, Teru realizes that the kids have been referring to Hina's grandmother, whose last name is Kian, just like Hina's. A wave of realization washes over him. He had endured an entire week of morning calisthenics, thinking he was working toward tasting something Hina had made. Now he understands that she had no part in making the pastries at all. As he continues chewing, he can't help but laugh at his own predicament, torn between disappointment and amusement. Okinawa is celebrating Kyuban, a 3-day festival observed on different dates each year according to the Japanese lunar calendar. The celebration consists of Onki, the first day, Nakanohi, the second day, and Oki, the final day when the spirits are sent off. Teru and Hina decide to spend the last day of the festival at Kana's home, where her family is holding a traditional gathering. Upon arriving, Teru is immediately struck by the sheer number of sandals lined up at the entrance, a clear sign of the many guests inside. The moment they step through the door, they are met with an enthusiastic chorus of greetings. The older relatives recognize Hina at once, happily welcoming her. Kana gently coaxes Teru away from the crowd and invites him to join in an ututu, a ritual of offering prayers to their ancestors. Though he doesn't fully understand what it entails, Teru nods along, willing to participate. When Kana and Hina tell him to kneel, they fail to realize that he doesn't quite grasp their meaning. Instead of assuming the traditional Seiza position, Teru gets down on one knee, unintentionally striking what looks like a proposal pose. Kana and Hina freeze, their faces turning red as they process the scene before them. Before they can react, one of the grandmothers walks by and teasingly asks if someone is getting married, causing Kana to snap out of her daze. Embarrassed, she quickly explains that they had meant to get into Seiza position to Teru. After properly paying respects at the family altar, Teru notices fresh fruits arranged as offerings. He is fascinated by the display, but puzzled by the presence of 2 tall, bamboo-like stalks standing on one side. Kana explains that they are sugarcane stalks, which serve a symbolic purpose. One stalk is for the ancestors to carry their offerings back to the afterlife, and the other is to be used as a walking stick. She also introduces the Ganshina, a container balanced on the head to carry additional gifts. Teru marvels at how different these traditions are from those on the mainland. He recalls how his elders used to say that ancestors in his hometown traveled to the afterlife on eggplants as big as horses. Amused by the idea, Hina suggests that they should have their ancestors ride on Goya instead, though the bumpy texture would surely make for an uncomfortable journey. Later in the evening, the family prepares for the final prayer to say farewell to their ancestors. A relative announces that it's time to offer money to the ancestors so they can use it in the afterlife. Taking this literally, Teru begins digging through his pockets. Kana quickly notices his confusion and explains that they don't mean real currency, but uchikebi, paper money believed to be used in Guso, the afterlife. Relieved, Teru watches as family members burn the paper bills. However, the smoke quickly fills the room, causing him to move to open a window. The moment he does, the distant sound of drums and chanting floods the air. Peering outside the window, he is greeted by the sight of an Iza performance. The spectacle captivates him instantly, and without hesitation, he rushes out to join Hina and Kana, who are already watching the performance. Kana admits that she and Hina had already been participating in Juni, a type of Iza performed around the village during the Obon celebration, before the sending off ceremony at home. Hina proudly declares that her grandfather is probably whistling happily in the afterlife. Seeing Hina speak so fondly of her grandfather, Teru wonders if it's truly okay for him, an outsider, to celebrate Oki with them. However, both Kana and Hina quickly reassure him that his presence is more than welcome. They even add that because he was in their celebration, they were able to burn extra uchikabi. Hina confidently claims that they must have sent at least 120 million yen to their relatives in the afterlife. Kana, however, is skeptical of Hina's math, believing the amount should be smaller. This sparks a lively debate among the older relatives, each offering their own calculations on how much uchikabi is worth. In 1976, a humble soba shop in Okinawa was run by two sisters. One day, a man from the mainland visited the shop. One of the sisters fell in love with the man, but the man was more focused on tasting their soba. However, after tasting their signature dish, he declared with so much confidence that it wasn't real soba. According to him, soba had to contain at least 30% buckwheat flour, but Okinawa soba contained none. His remark set off a chain reaction that led to the Fair Trade Committee banning the use of the name Okinawa soba. Determined to protect their cultural dish, the Okinawa Noodle Union fought tirelessly to have their soba recognized. Their efforts paid off when, on October 17, 1978, they won the right to call it Real Okinawa Soba, a victory that is now celebrated annually as Okinawa Soba Day. Teru listens intently to the story, appreciating the dedication to preserving Okinawan culture. As they continue to chow down on their soba, Kana encourages him to try korigusu, a spicy Okinawan chili seasoning. Seeing how much Hina loves it, Teru boldly adds a generous amount to his bowl. To his delight, the spice perfectly enhances the rich broth, and he confidently pours in even more. However, as they finish their meal, Hina offers Teru a glass of water, noticing that he's acting a little strange. Tetsu from the next table, who had been eavesdropping on their conversation, informs them that Teru is actually drunk. Teru had unknowingly consumed too much korigusu, a spicy seasoning made by soaking island chili peppers in a wamori, a strong Okinawan liquor. As the reality of his accidental intoxication sets in, the group watches him with growing concern. Tears well up in Teru's eyes as he turns to Hina, pouring his heart out in gratitude. His words become an emotional, rambling mess as he expresses just how much he appreciates her, making Hina blush deeply. Kana, watching the exchange from the side, feels a pang of jealousy creeping in. Noticing Kana's growing discomfort, Ye seizes the opportunity to shift Teru's attention. She slyly reminds him that Kana is usually the one translating for him and ensuring he doesn't get lost in their conversations. As if struck by a sudden revelation, Teru stumbles toward Kana, his eyes glassy with emotion. He corners her dramatically, weeping as he thanks her for all the time she's helped him understand Okinawan culture. On a scorching summer day, Teru and his classmates suffer through the relentless heat in their humid classroom. Desperate to stay positive, he casually comments that the blazing sun is a great opportunity to get a tan. Hearing this, Hina suddenly puts on a pair of sunglasses and speaks in her dialect. Teru, unable to understand her words, gets the distinct feeling that she might be mad at him. Luckily, Kana, standing behind Hina, translates for him, stating that Hina is warning him about the Okinawan sun. Hina tells Teru that tourists always end up in the hospital during the summer because they come ill-prepared to tackle the sun. Other than heat stroke, people actually get burned in Okinawa. Okinawa's UV index is nearly twice that of Sapporo's, and at the beach, where the water reflects the sunlight, people literally get burned. Sunglasses are a necessity during the summer to protect your eyes. Kana steps closer to Teru and compliments his skin tone, noting that he has gotten much tanner since his arrival. The remark makes Teru happy since he wants to look Okinawan. Proudly, Hina lifts her leg and removes her sock, revealing a distinct sandal tan line. Beaming, she declares that to be a true Okinawan, one must have to get Shimazori tan lines. However, instead of admiring the tan line, Teru's gaze drifts elsewhere. Her lifted leg reveals more of her thighs than he expected. His face heats up, realizing that in her excitement, Hina has completely forgotten about her posture. He forces himself to look at her feet instead and agree with her. Suddenly, Hina's classmates start poking fun at her for still caring about her Shimazori tan lines. Most of them no longer had any since they wore full uniforms on weekdays, making Hina's enthusiasm seem childish. To her horror, even Kana had outgrown them. When they were younger, the two of them would always argue about who had the better Shimazura tan lines. Refusing to believe it, Hina grabs Kana's sock, determined to see for herself, but their struggle ends with both of them on the ground. Hina finally manages to pull off Kana's sock. A wave of devastation washes over her as she sees Kana's foot free of tan lines. It felt like a part of their shared childhood had been left behind, so she clings to Kana, wailing dramatically about being abandoned. While watching Hina and Teru talk about skin tones, Kana feels a tinge of insecurity. Unlike Teru, who is fascinated by the idea of blending in, she had spent years trying to protect her skin from darkening too much. One day, as the wind picks up, dark clouds gather overhead. Hina, recognizing the signs, recites an old saying about the coming typhoon. She can use her dialect, almost as if summoning the storm herself. Teru, unaware of how severe Okinawan typhoons could be, looked up at the sky with excitement. It would be his first real typhoon experience since arriving on the island. The conversation quickly turned to past typhoons, with the group eagerly discussing the sizes and intensities in hectopascals. Teru was amazed by how naturally they understood storm severity, as if typhoons were just another part of everyday life. They then began listing what they needed to buy before the storm hit, treating preparation as a well-practiced routine. His attention shifts to Kana and Suzu, who are planning a visit to Tsutaya, a DVD rental store. Hina explained that before a typhoon, Tsutaya is always packed. Streaming services were unreliable during storms, so renting DVDs and watching them on a portable player was the best way to pass the time. As they continue walking, they pass a lively bar. Kana points out that since offices let employees leave early before a typhoon, many chose to drink before heading home. Some of the adults recognized Hina and playfully warned her not to go to the beach, knowing she had a habit of doing reckless things. Eventually, Hina, Kana, and Teru part ways to return home. Teru calls his father, only to learn that he was stuck on Ishigaki Island as the airport had shut down for the storm. Realizing he would be alone for the night, Teru eagerly set up his favorite snacks, looking forward to the uninterrupted solitude. Leisurely eating chips, he tries messaging some friends, but no one responds. He shrugs it off and continues enjoying his laziness, savoring the freedom. At some point, he dozed off, thinking about how great the day was turning out to be. When he wakes up, he hits the shock of his life. The wind howled outside, rattling the windows. Trees bent violently, their branches whipping through the air. Teru uses his phone to snap a picture of the chaos, but feels an uneasy sense of dread settling in. Then, without warning, the power went out. There had been no lightning, so the sudden darkness caught him off guard. Checking his phone, he noticed multiple messages had come in while he was asleep. Just as he tries to reply, his phone dies. Panic set in. With no power, he had no way to charge his phone. When he turned on the faucet, no water came out. He hadn't prepared anything. Until now, he had assumed Okinawan typhoons were just slightly worse than the storms he was used to. But this was on an entirely different scale. Okinawa had a history of intense typhoons, with the worst recorded reaching speeds of 73.6 miles per second, powerful enough to uproot trees. He finds a flashlight and uses it as a light source. A dragging noise echoed from the upper floor, followed by a splashing sound near the window. When he turns to look out the window, a harmless plush toy brought near by the winds looks like a monstrous creature trying to get inside, so he scrambles to his room for cover. Then a knock at the door startles him. He cautiously approached and opened it. Standing in the doorway is Kana, staring at him in surprise. Standing in the doorway, drenched from the storm, is Kana, who looks equally shocked. Teru barely has time to react as Hina tackles him back inside. Their group was worried since they hadn't heard from him since everyone had gone home, so Kana, Hina, and Tetsu decided to check on him. Seeing his ill-prepared state, they insist on taking him to their home, where he can be safe and comfortable for the night. As they drive through the rain-soaked streets, Teru stares out the car window, anxiety creeping into his mind. He worries about the well-being of the rest of their friends, but Kana reassures him that storms like this are common in Okinawa. The locals are used to handling extreme weather, so there is no need for concern. Before heading home, they decide to stop by Super Union, a well-known Okinawan supermarket. The store has a reputation for staying open even during the worst typhoons, providing supplies for those who need them. However, when they arrive, the sight before them sends a chill down their spines because Super Union is closed. Hina and Kana exchange nervous glances. If Super Union shuts down, the storm will be more serious than they thought. Without wasting time, they drive straight to Kana's house, where they are greeted by her grandmother, who warmly invites Teru to stay the night. Not wanting to impose, he tries to insist that he can leave after dinner, but Tetsu convinces him to stay since there's no one in the apartment waiting for him anyway. The atmosphere inside is lively and welcoming. The family eagerly sits Teru down for dinner, where he is met with dishes he has never seen before. The table is set with suman champeru, a stir-fried summon noodle dish, and hiriachi, a type of Okinawan savory pancake. Those are common dishes served during the storm since households seem to have a stock of them since they have a long shelf life. Kana's younger sister, Suzu, attempts to reveal that Kana made the meal, but Kana swiftly silences her before she can finish. Unaware of the exchange, Teru focuses on savoring the delicious flavors, appreciating the warmth and hospitality he is receiving from Kana's family. The night is filled with laughter and entertainment. They watch rental DVDs, play games, and share stories to pass the time. Teru's initial fear of the typhoon gradually fades, replaced by the comforting presence of his friends and the homey environment. Later in the evening, Teru approaches Kana, wanting to thank her. If she hadn't insisted on checking up on him, he would have spent the storm alone, unprepared, and afraid. Instead, he ends up having an unforgettable experience filled with warmth and safety. Just as Kana is about to respond, the candle gets snuffed out. The room plunges into darkness and the group scrambles to find another candle. Suzu, in the process, accidentally drops the cream puff she has been eating. As Tetsuru lights the candle, the flickering flame reveals something unexpected. Kana and Teru have ended up sitting very close, their faces mere inches apart. The sudden realization makes both of them freeze. Their breath catches and their eyes lock in the dim light. Suzu, meanwhile, was completely oblivious to their predicament. Her only concern was that Kana might be mad at her for wasting food. Seeing Kana's flushed face, she misinterpreted the reaction to be that of anger. Kana, realizing she is still red, decides to pretend to be angry just to avoid any suspicion about her true feelings for Teru. A few days after the storm had passed, the group gathered at the beach to enjoy the sunshine and clear skies. Hina and Kavana are engrossed in a conversation about me and Habu. Teru, having no idea what they mean, struggles to understand. His mind bounces between two possibilities. Were they talking about Yoshiharu Habu, the famous shoujo player, or a Habu snake, one of Okinawa's most notorious venomous creatures? To clear up the confusion, Hina pulls up a photo on her phone of a man showing off a Habu snake. Teru recalls that Okinawa is notorious for being home to Habu, and the idea makes him think of a mongoose. Mentioning the other animal pulls an unexpected, depressing reaction from the group. Apparently, there's a tragic story behind the Habu and the mongoose. In the mid-1800s, anti-venom for the snake had yet to be invented, making them a major threat to the people of the island. To control the snake population, the first solution was to introduce weasels, but it quickly became apparent that the snakes could easily defeat them. Looking for something stronger, officials decided to import mongooses to the island. While the initial plan seemed successful, the two animals eventually started to avoid each other, making the effort ineffective. Worse, the mongooses turned their attention to hunting Yanbaraquina, a rare flightless bird native to Okinawa. As their population began to decline, the government had to step in to protect the birds, but to this day, the Yanbaraquina remains endangered. The story is sad enough to bring tears to any local's eyes. Teru expresses surprise that he has yet to see a Habu since coming to Okinawa, and he learns that they usually hide in the tall grass. Even Kana and Hina rarely see them. Most of their encounters are with the unfortunate ones that have been run over by cars. Hina warns Teru not to go near roadkill Habu, as they can still attack even when severely injured. She also mentions an unusual fact that if someone brings a dead Habu to City Hall, officials will pay them 3,000 yen for it. Kana chimes in, explaining that Habu skin is often used to make various trinkets and accessories, but it can be easily mistaken for other snakeskin. For example, the base of the sanshin, a traditional Okinawan string instrument, is usually made from python skin rather than Habu. Excited, Hina suddenly exclaims that she wants to try Habu Saki in the future, claiming that it would give her a lot of stamina. At this, Kana instantly turns red, interpreting the statement in a more suggestive manner. In adult conversations, gaining stamina from Habu Saki is often a euphemism for increased endurance in bed. However, Hina remains completely oblivious to Kana's implication. She innocently explains that her grandparents drink Habu Saki to prevent chills as it helps with blood circulation. Kana and Teru turn even redder, embarrassed at their own thoughts. The realization that Habu Saki has genuine health benefits leaves them flustered for having assumed otherwise. Suzu, completely unaware of their conversation, playfully plants a sea cucumber on Teru's shoulder. On another day, Teru and Kana visit Hina's house, where she presents them with some pineapples. Teru, already feeling blessed by the sweet treat and Hina's adorable twin bun hairstyle, is excited to dig in. However, when he asks for a knife to cut the fruit open, he is shocked to see Hina and Kana casually ripping the pineapple apart with their bare hands. Seeing his bewildered face, Hina quickly explains that the pineapple is a snack pineapple, a variety that is softer than regular pineapples and can be easily torn apart with bare hands. Even the core is edible, making it a convenient and delicious treat. Suddenly, Hina stands up, announcing that she'll be getting some bananas. Teru expects her to head to the kitchen, but to his surprise, she steps outside into the garden. Curious, he follows and finds banana shrubs sprouting all around. Unlike the bananas he is used to, the ones grown in Okinawa are considered a luxury fruit. The fruit is rounder, plump, and gooey. They are also significantly more expensive, costing 10 to 20 times more than regular bananas. As they chat, Hina is shocked to learn that bananas don't naturally grow on the mainland. However, their conversation is soon interrupted when Sachiko and Hina's mother appear, asking if they are harvesting bananas. Wanting to leave a good impression, Teru eagerly offers to help harvest the fruits. He confidently steps forward, grabs his stalk, and begins to cut, spilling loads of juice on himself and onto his clothes. Unfortunately, he quickly learns the hard way about banana juice. As soon as the sap splatters onto his clothes, Hina explains that she meant to warn him that banana juice is infamous for staining fabric, and once it sets, it almost never comes off. Feeling embarrassed, Teru awkwardly reassures Hina that it's fine. However, determined to prove himself, he offers to harvest more bananas, claiming he wants to experience Okinawan life to the fullest. In reality, he just wants to impress Hina. Hina, oblivious to his real intentions, is touched by his eagerness to learn more about Okinawan culture. The two continue harvesting together, and by the end, both of them are drenched in sweat and banana juice. Kana, who has been watching from the sidelines, offers to get a hose to wash the bananas. Teru, feeling accomplished, is pleased with himself. Sachiko, amused by his enthusiasm, hands him a large bunch of bananas as a gift. With a warm smile, she tells him Ichirabatsude. Hina explains that her grandmother meant he is like family, forgetting to explain that it's a common phrase exchanged in bars to show joy and gratefulness. Teru assumes this means he has been officially accepted into Hina's family, and in his excitement, he proudly declares that he would be glad to take care of Hina in the future, confusing Hina and Kana, who had just arrived at the tail end of the conversation. Later, as he heads home with 2 plastic bags full of bananas, he notices 2 children screaming and running away at the sight of him. Confused, he continues walking until he reaches home, only for his father to give him a similarly horrified look. Glancing down, he finally realizes why. The banana juice that was originally yellow apparently becomes crimson after it dries, so people would usually wear a raincoat when harvesting bananas in Okinawa. One morning at school, Teru is pleased to see Hina, who eagerly starts chatting with him. As they talk, something catches his attention. Her dialect is gone and she is speaking in standard Japanese. Curious, he asks why she is suddenly making the effort to speak like this, and Hina admits that she wishes to speak to him more. Teru is shocked by Hina's revelation, struggling to process her words. The possibility that she might have just confessed to him lingers in his mind, but uncertainty keeps him from fully grasping the meaning behind her statement. An awkward silence stretches between them, neither knowing how to proceed. Hina, visibly flustered, quickly changes the subject and begins talking about a new pancake house opening in town. She expresses her excitement to try it and casually mentions that she would like to visit it with him. The sudden shift in topic catches Teru off guard, but he eagerly responds, happy to have a full conversation with her without needing a translation guide. As the conversation flows, a sense of guilt creeps into his mind. He realizes that Hina is making a conscious effort to speak in standard Japanese for his sake, setting aside the dialect she loves. The thought troubles him, and he begins to feel as though he is taking something precious away from her. He reflects on how much she values the Okinawan language and culture, recognizing that she shouldn't have to change just to accommodate him. A sudden voice speaking fluent Okinawan startles him. Expecting to hear Hina, he looks up only to see Kana standing there, effortlessly conversing in the dialect. Confusion sets in as he watches Hina translate for Kana, making him panic at the surreal nature of the situation. Before he can make sense of what is happening, the ground beneath him crumbles and everything fades to black. The next day, he recounts the strange experience to Hina and Kana, still trying to make sense of it. In Okinawa, only 30% of the population can still speak and understand their dialect. The local government has been making efforts to preserve the language through various initiatives, including language tests, speech and writing competitions, and TV and radio advertisements promoting its use. One morning, Teru suggests going to the beach with his classmates, realizing he has yet to experience swimming in Okinawa. Upon arrival, Izo receives a message from the girls who had arrived earlier and already started swimming. At the mention of the girls being in the water, Teru's mind immediately fills with images of them in cute swimsuits. Suddenly, he hears Hina's voice greeting them, and excitement rushes through him as he eagerly turns, hoping to be blessed with the sight of their swimwear. However, his anticipation is quickly replaced with disappointment when he sees Hina and the other girls still in their regular clothing. Hina explains that Okinawans don't usually wear swimsuits when swimming, preferring to keep their clothes on. Embarrassment washes over Teru as he realizes he is the only one in swim trunks, making it obvious that he isn't from Okinawa. Pushing aside his momentary awkwardness, Teru dives into the water alongside Hina. Through his goggles, he marvels at the vibrant marine life beneath him, a sight he could never experience on the mainland. He follows Hina as she effortlessly guides him through the underwater scenery. When they finally resurfaced, Teru excitedly exclaims how many live fish he has seen, only for the others to chuckle at his reaction. Their attention shifts to Kana and Ye, who are waiting near the shore. The group calls for them to join them in the deeper waters, but before they can respond, a sudden cry disrupts the cheerful atmosphere. A young child clutches his hand in pain. Concerned, Hina rushes over to assess the situation. The child's finger has begun to swell, and Hina quickly deduces that he was likely bitten by a ganzui, a small fish resembling a catfish. Remaining calm, she assures the boy that she knows a trick to help ease the pain. Without hesitation, she gently takes the swollen finger into her mouth and begins to suck out the venom. Teru watches the scene unfold, his heart swelling with admiration. Hina's selflessness and quick thinking leave him in awe. Once she is satisfied that she has removed most of the venom, she spits into the ocean and instructs the child to go to the convenience store to buy something warm to press against the wound. As the child and his mother thank her and head off, Teru's gaze lingers on Hina. He finds himself mesmerized by her kindness and natural ability to help others. When Hina notices him staring, she playfully pokes him, snapping him out of his thoughts. They return to the water, but the earlier incident leaves Teru feeling uneasy. Hina reassures him that ganzui is usually harmless unless provoked. However, she warns him that Okinawa's waters are home to other dangerous marine animals, and it's important to recognize them in order to stay safe. The first she mentions is the ganzui, a venomous fish that moves in clusters, its sting capable of causing significant pain. She then describes the datsu, a fish that aggressively charges at shiny objects. Next, she warns him about sea snakes, which are present in Okinawan waters and are reportedly 70 times more venomous than a habu snake. Finally, she tells him about the katsuonomboshi, a type of jellyfish whose sting inflicts excruciating pain on the first encounter and can trigger anaphylactic shock upon a second sting. Before she can finish warning him about the most common dangerous creature in the area, Teru suddenly feels a sharp, searing pain in his arm. Wincing, he instinctively clutches his right forearm. Hina immediately notices a jellyfish called a habukuragi floating away. Like the habu snake it is named after, this particular jellyfish is venomous. They rush out of the water, and Teru groans as everyone inspects the stung area, his skin already inflamed. Hina moves in to examine it, telling him to hold still. Teru, still dazed from the pain, assumes she's about to suck the venom out like she did for the child earlier. The thought alone sends his heart into overdrive, and he quickly realizes he might not be emotionally prepared for the sensation of his crush's lips touching his bare skin. However, his fantasies come to a crashing halt when, instead of her mouth, he feels something cold and foul-smelling being poured over his arm. He turns to check what she is putting on him, only to discover that Hina has poured a bottle of vinegar onto his wound. She explains that the first step in treating a habukuragi sting is to pour vinegar on the affected area, as it helps prevent the venom from spreading. While this method is effective for most jellyfish stings, she warns him that it should never be used for katsuonomboshi stings, as it would actually accelerate the venom's spread. Unfortunately for Teru, his first experience swimming in Okinawa had ended on a sour note. The group decides to call it a day so that Teru can rest. As they walk back home, one of Teru's friends offers some of his water to Teru, as the sting area should be treated with cold water or ice after applying vinegar on it. Meanwhile, a young child walking past them complains about the overpowering stench of vinegar. One weekend, Teru, finding himself with no scheduled calisthenics sessions, decides to go for a walk. However, he immediately regrets it as the intense humidity makes his journey uncomfortable. Suddenly hears Hina calling his name. Turning behind him, he sees her waving at him from a car. She shouts something in Okinawan, causing Teru to freeze in confusion. Before he can respond, Kana pokes her head out of the car window, translating for him. Hina had been asking where he was headed. They invite him to join them on their road trip, and Teru happily accepts. As they drive, he reflects on how much more convenient it is to own a car in Okinawa. Unlike the mainland, where people rely heavily on buses and trains for transportation, Okinawans seem to find car ownership more practical. His comment earns him puzzled looks from the group. Kana then clarifies, explaining that Okinawa is the only prefecture in Japan without a train system. However, they do have a monorail called the Yui Rail. Suddenly, Teru understands why Hina was so interested in a photo of a train crossing before. Tetsu suddenly asks to see the photo later, since he has never seen a train before. Teru then decides to talk about the Yui Rail, admitting that he hasn't gotten the chance to ride it yet. Hina explains that it's only located in the south and not many people actually use it. Only tourists and those who work nearby are its usual passengers. Tetsu suddenly remembers that when Kana was a kid, she used to want to ride the Yui Rail because of the scene and drama she watched. She even threw a huge tantrum when she couldn't ride it. Hearing her brother recount the story, Kana hides her reddening face in embarrassment, horrified that Tetsu had told such an embarrassing tale to her crush. Hina then tells Teru that cars are considered partners to people in Okinawa. They are so important that back in the day there was even a drive-through boom. There were so many options back then, from ice cream, soba, even gyoza, but the latter was stopped earlier on due to taking too much time. She even tells him that there used to be drive-through ATMs for convenience. The idea baffles Teru, but he admits that he wants to try it someday. Kana quietly interjects that some still exist, and the most common one is drive-through gyudon. Kana struggles to stay active in the conversation, having had to skip breakfast to go on a ride with them. She worries that her stomach might make an audible rumble if they keep talking about food. Kana clutches her tummy and hopes that her stomach won't let out a growl, but her hunger wins and her stomach lets out a loud growl. However, Teru's stomach grumbles right after hers, and he embarrassingly admits that all the talk about food has worked up an appetite. Getting over her own embarrassment, Kana lets out a chuckle and admits that she's hungry as well. Tetsu, seeing that both of his passengers need food, decides that now's the perfect time to eat. They end up going to a drive-through place popular for American-style fast food. Tetsu orders their usual burger and fries, then waits in the car for their food to be ready. Teru is puzzled. Back on the mainland, drive-thrus usually require cars to move forward to pay and collect orders. Looking out the window, he notices other cars waiting as well. Moments later, a restaurant staff member approaches their car and hands them their meals. Teru, so confused, expected a quick pickup, not to wait for someone to hand them their meal and park. Hina, already taking a big bite of her burger, casually explains that this is a drive-in. In Okinawa, drive-ins are more popular because people prefer to park their cars and eat inside, rather than going into the restaurant. Impressed by the concept, Teru thanks Tetsu for the food. As he eats, he notices how the parked cars resemble seats at a counter, creating a unique dining atmosphere. The experience makes him think about the future. He looks forward to getting his driver's license, so he can take road trips, enjoy meals like this, and soak in the scenery at his own pace. As Kana happily munches on her burger, Hina brings up an unexpected fact. Okinawa has one of the highest obesity rates in Japan. Kana freezes mid-bite, suddenly self-conscious. She glances down and pinches her stomach, realizing she has gained weight. A wave of regret washes over her as she recalls her bad habits, since she loves snacking a lot, napping after meals, and rarely walking anywhere. In Okinawa, the intense heat makes people rely on cars, even for trips that are just 5 minutes away. Determined to change, Kana pushes her fries toward the group, surprising everyone since they all know how much she loves to eat. As they continue driving, the conversation shifts back to Kana's obsession with riding the Yui rail when she was a child. Hina recalls how, as a kid, Kana threw a massive tantrum when she couldn't ride it. Kana's grandmother, unsure of how to calm her down, left her in Hina's care for the day. Hina, always full of ideas, promised to take Kana on a bus ride to the Yui rail station. However, when they finally reached the platform, Hina got so excited that she accidentally boarded the train with Kana, forgetting that Kana simply wanted to admire it from the platform. To Hina's relief, Kana wasn't upset at all. Instead, she excitedly rambled about a TV drama where a schoolgirl fell in love with a train conductor. She spoke so fast that Hina struggled to understand her. But then, over the speakers, Tashindoa, a song usually played during festivals, began playing to announce the next stop. Mistaking it for a cue to dance, Hina enthusiastically started moving to the beat, much to the amusement of everyone on board. Kana, watching her, smiled. She thought to herself that Hina was still too young to understand love, but at least she could enjoy herself in the moment. On the ride back, Kana suggested that Hina should join a youth group since she loved dancing to folk music so much. To her surprise, Hina took the idea seriously and eagerly asked if Kana would join her. Kana, not one to enjoy the spotlight, immediately refused. Back in the present, Kana laughs, admitting that they both got scolded when they returned home that day. Hina, however, still remembers that moment as the reason she decided to join a youth dance group. Kana blinks, realizing she had completely forgotten about that part. A few days later at school, Yae admits to herself that she enjoys teasing Kana about her crush on Teru. It's rare to see a usually stoic girl react so expressively. However, while watching the two interact, Yae feels a little frustrated when Kana misses yet another chance to invite Teru out on a date. As Hina joins the conversation, Yae notices Kana seamlessly translating for Teru as Hina speaks. She's impressed since it takes about 5 years to understand Okinawan and nearly 10 years to speak it fluently, yet Kana does it effortlessly. Walking home, Yae sighs, thinking to herself that love really is something incredible. One day in Okinawa, Teru decides to visit a nearby Family Mart to buy some fried chicken. However, as he steps outside, he notices something strange. The streets are completely empty and every shop is closed, making the entire place seem like a ghost town. Confused, he wanders through the town, searching for any sign of life, but no one is around. Determined to find an answer, he makes his way toward the community areas, hoping to at least spot a passerby. Yet despite his efforts, the entire town seems abandoned. At his wit's end, he finally shouts at the top of his lungs, asking if anyone can hear him. To his surprise, he suddenly spots Hina, Kana, and Yae standing beneath a nearby tree. Their faces are unusually serious, as if they are about to reveal something big. Breaking the silence, Hina finally explains why the streets are deserted. Everyone is indoors, getting ready to watch a major baseball game featuring an Okinawan team. She goes on to tell him about the historic 2010 Kashin High School baseball tournament, where Konan High School won both the spring and summer championships. The victory is so monumental that on the day of the game, the streets of Okinawa are completely empty as every local had their eyes glued to the TV screen. Teru is puzzled. Can a baseball game really have such a dramatic effect on an entire prefecture? But when the girls take him to a nearby mall, he sees it with his own eyes. A massive crowd has gathered in front of a TV screen, cheering passionately for their team. It is clear, Okinawans don't just like baseball, they love it. Public viewings like this are common, and even construction workers halt their work during big games to enjoy and to show themselves and respect those who wish to focus on the game. There is even a rumor that business deals can collapse if someone dares to interrupt someone watching the game. Hina also shares an old baseball tradition. Losing teams at Kashin collect the infield sand as a memento of their journey. However, when Okinawa's first team loses their game, they aren't allowed to bring the sand home. Airport security stops them, citing a rule against transporting foreign soil. Heartbroken, the players are forced to dump the sand at Naha Airport. The incident leaves a lasting mark on Okinawans, strengthening their devotion to baseball. From that moment on, every time an Okinawan team plays at Kashin, the entire prefecture unites to support them. Seeing this overwhelming sense of unity, Teru finds himself caught up in the excitement. He decides to join in and cheer along with the others for Okinawa. However, as he tries to follow Hina's lead, he quickly realizes how difficult it is to pronounce the players' names. Listening to the announcer only makes things worse. Their names are even more complicated than he expects. Just then, a player with a last name similar to Kana's makes an incredible hit. Kana, who has been quiet for most of the game, suddenly jumps up in excitement, grabbing onto Yae in pure joy. Teru watches the moment unfold and smiles to himself. Kana tries to claim that she's only a fan of the player because they share a last name, but her excitement tells a different story. Every time the Okinawan team scores a point, she reacts enthusiastically, gripping Yae in a tight hug. Noticing this pattern, Yae decides to offer her seat to Teru in the hope that Kana will instinctively hug him instead. Too focused on the game, Kana does not even realize Teru has taken the seat beside her. When the Okinawan team hits a home run, she jumps in excitement and throws her arms around him without a second thought. Only when the initial rush fades, she becomes aware of their close proximity. Her body stiffens, and as she looks up, she immediately pulls away and apologizes, her face flushed with embarrassment. From behind them, Yae sneaks closer with a knowing grin. She casually remarks that she just witnessed something amusing. Hina, assuming she's referring to the home run, agrees, nodding in excitement. Kana, however, hides her face, painfully aware that Yae is actually referring to her impulsive hug. Teru, as clueless as ever, also assumes Yae is talking about the game and continues watching as if nothing happened. On a rainy afternoon, Teru and his friends take shelter under a covered walkway, waiting for the downpour to pass. To keep themselves entertained, they decide to play Shiratori, a Japanese word game where each word must start with the last syllable of the previous word. Teru struggles to keep up, realizing his friends have a clear advantage due to their knowledge of the Okinawan dialect. Many of the words they use are unfamiliar to him, and since a lot of them start with the N sound, he finds it difficult to avoid losing. He feels that learning the dialect is hard, but Hina reassures him that it's easy if he remembers some basic rules. The Okinawan dialect follows certain rules that make it distinct from standard Japanese. Vowels like E and O are often replaced with I and U, making familiar words sound completely different. Some sounds are also shortened or altered, which adds another layer of complexity. Hina takes pride in her knowledge, feeling a sense of accomplishment as she explains the dialect to the group. She attributes her fluency to the time she spent with her grandmother who spoke in the old ways. However, just as she starts to feel confident, an elderly woman from a neighboring town approaches them and speaks in a much deeper dialect. Her words are so unfamiliar that even Hina looks completely lost. As the woman walks away, Teru expects Hina to translate, but she admits that she does not understand a word either. She explains that Okinawa was not always unified, and as a result, different villages developed their own versions of the dialect. Even among locals, communication can sometimes be a challenge if they come from different areas. Hina, feeling embarrassed after getting caught not knowing everything about the Okinawan dialect, allows Teru to come up with a punishment for her. He briefly considers making her do something with her boobs, but ultimately decides to have her treat everyone to shaved ice instead. On another bright summer day, Hina visits Kana's house, hoping to invite her out to hang out. As she approaches, she hears loud voices from inside, realizing that Kana is in the middle of an argument with Suzu. Curious, she sneaks in through the back and finds Suzu stubbornly refusing to eat the tomatoes on her plate. Hina, always eager to share her knowledge, tries to convince Suzu to eat her vegetables by telling her that eating tomatoes will make her strong like the Yamapakarya of Iriomote Island. Both Kana and Suzu stare at her in confusion, not understanding the reference. She explains that in 2021, Iriomote Island was added to the World Heritage List because of its unique biodiversity. The island is home to animals that cannot be found anywhere else, including the Yamapakarya, also known as the Iriomote cat. These wild cats have a fascinating history. Their ancestors ended up on the island before the continental shift and became trapped there as sea levels changed. With limited food sources, they adapted to their harsh environment, even learning how to swim so they could catch fish and shellfish. This ability to adapt to various conditions has made them remarkably resilient. Hearing about how strong and adaptable the Iriomote cat is, Suzu decides she wants to be just as tough. Determined to grow stronger, she reluctantly picks up her fork and starts eating her tomatoes, much to Kana's surprise. Hina, satisfied with the outcome, turns her attention to Kana, who is now free to join her for a trip to the pool. Despite their adaptability, Iriomote cats are still considered endangered, with only a few hundred left in the wild. Their survival is fragile, as even small changes to their environment could threaten their existence. Later that evening, Teru and his friends gather outside for a test of courage. To set the mood, Sachiko shares one of her childhood ghost stories. She recounts how, as a child, she had been playing in the streets after dark when she noticed a shadowy silhouette in the distance. Believing it to be a friend, she called out and ran after it. But when she reached the spot, no one was there. Instead, she found a fish lying on the ground with its eyes torn out. Before she could react, she looked up and saw something terrifying staring back at her. The group shivers at the suspenseful ending, with some of them praising Sachiko's storytelling skills. However, Teru remains confused. Since the story was told entirely in dialect, he struggles to understand the details. He turns to Hina and Kana for help, but both girls are too afraid to even listen to the story, doing their best to block it out by shielding their ears. Seeing his two friends too afraid to uncover their ears, Teru decides against asking for more details about the story. Instead, he reassures them that it's already over. His words seem to work, as Hina is the first to cautiously uncover her ears, giving him a tearful expression that, to his surprise, makes his heart leap with how cute she looks. Just as the tension begins to fade, another member of the group offers to tell another scary tale. This time, it's about a taxi driver who picked up an unusual passenger late one evening. The passenger had given him odd directions, leading him to a dark and lonely part of town. When the driver finally turned around to check on his passenger, there was no one there, only a pile of ochikabi left behind. Another girl follows up with her own ghost story. In her tale, two strangers meet by chance, but when one of them reaches into his pocket later that night, he finds it mysteriously filled with ochikabi. As Teru listens to the different stories, he notices a strange pattern. All of them end with ochikabi, the ceremonial paper money used in Okinawan funerals. Yae then volunteers to tell the next story, one that takes place several decades ago. Her tale follows a young schoolgirl who had to take a bus home late at night after staying behind for club practice. The bus was nearly empty due to the late hour, and as she sat quietly in her seat, the vehicle stopped at a red light. Suddenly, the bus doors opened, but no one stepped inside. The girl found it odd, especially since the doors seemed to shut so quickly, but she assumed the driver had simply closed them by mistake. However, as she looked ahead, she suddenly noticed shadowy figures approaching the passengers. At first, she thought she was imagining things, but as she continued watching, she saw the figures move from one passenger to another, peering closely into their faces before silently moving on. No one else seemed to react, as if she was the only one who could see them. Her heart pounded as she realized it would soon be her turn. She kept her head down, hoping that if she didn't acknowledge the figures, they would pass her by. Eventually, she sensed the presence moving away, and she breathed a quiet sigh of relief. Believing she was safe, she dared to lift her head. But to her horror, the spirit was still in front of her, staring straight at her. The group, including Teru, lets out a collective scream at the conclusion of Yae's story, completely unprepared for such a terrifying ending. No one expected Yae to know such a frightening tale, and the mood is now set for the actual test of courage. Wanting to move forward with their plan, they begin drawing lots to determine their partners for the night's challenge. The goal is simple. Each pair must retrieve a sangawa, a traditional Okinawan protective charm, placed on top of a stone monument deep within the forest. As Teru watches everyone pick their numbers, he silently hopes that luck will be on his side and that he'll be paired with Hina. What he doesn't realize, however, is that Kana is the one who got his number. While calling out his number, Kana approaches Teru, silently showing him that she picked his matching number, confirming that they are partners for the test of courage. Both feel a sense of relief at being paired with someone familiar, though Teru is slightly disheartened to see that Hina is partnered with someone else. As the rest of the group continues searching for their partners, a pair of sharp, glowing eyes watches them from the forest. Once all the pairs are set, they begin their journey into the dark woods, setting off a few minutes apart. Teru and Kana, the eighth team to depart, try to distract themselves from their nerves. Teru attempts to lighten the mood by talking about their summer homework, but the eerie silence of the forest makes it difficult to focus on casual conversation. While Teru is still shaken by the ghost stories, Kana is nervous about being alone with him. The night air is still, amplifying every rustling leaf and distant chirp. Both of them try to mask their unease with lighthearted chatter, but the topics quickly dry up. Suddenly, Teru hears a strange laughter-like sound coming from a nearby bush. Kana, noticing his reaction, reassures him that it's just a Yoru and Okinawan gecko. Unlike the silent geckos common on the mainland, Okinawan geckos are known for their vocalizations, which often startle outsiders. The island is full of these geckos, and they often end up trapped in air conditioning units. To prevent this, many locals purchase gecko guards designed to keep the creatures from sneaking inside homes. For Kana, the chirping is familiar background noise, so she finds it amusing that Teru is startled. Seeing his flustered reaction, she chuckles. As they continue their search for the charm, their conversation flows more easily, easing some of the tension. However, their laughter is abruptly cut short when Teru's flashlight illuminates a figure in the distance, someone wearing a cow-headed mask. Both Kana and Teru instinctively tense, but they quickly realize it must be one of their friends playing a prank. Kana explains that the masked figure is imitating a cow Majuman, a yokai said to bring death if it runs between a person's legs. Teru then turns his flashlight in another direction, only to find another figure, this time wearing a pig-headed mask. Kana identifies it as an Uwagawa Majuman, another spirit with a similar deadly superstition. Animal-like yokai are common in Okinawan folklore, often known for running between people's legs to bring misfortune. Kana and Teru decide to ignore their masked friends and press forward. As they continue, Teru catches sight of something strange out of the corner of his eye. Turning to get a better look, he and Kana spot a peculiar human-like figure with long, tangled hair wearing a flowing white dress. Its limbs are twisted at unnatural angles, and its darting, crazed eyes shift between them and the darkness beyond. A chill runs down their spines as the figure starts moving toward them. Kana freezes in place, her breath catching in her throat. The figure begins mumbling something incomprehensible. As it draws closer, its mutterings become clearer as it tells them to kiss. Unknown to them, the ghostly figure is actually Yae in disguise. Watching from behind Yae, their friends notice Kana's genuine fear and quietly debate whether they should put an end to the act. But Yae, determined to push Kana and Teru's relationship forward, chooses to ignore their concerns and continues her eerie performance. Suddenly, Teru spots something else. Another figure stands just beside the ghostly woman, moving in an even more unsettling manner. This one is masked, its body twisting and writhing in a grotesque, unnatural fashion. He glances at Kana and sees how truly frightened she is. Without hesitation, he grabs her hand and bolts in the opposite direction, dragging her away from the terrifying scene. The warmth of his hand sends a rush of emotions through her, and despite the scare, she finds herself falling even more in love with him. They finally burst out of the woods, breathless, into the clearing where the rest of their group is gathered. The moment she sees them, Hina rushes forward, throwing her arms around Kana in relief. Teru then notices the yokai from earlier. The cow-headed yokai is revealed to be Tensuki, the pig-headed one is Takezu, and the eerie ghostly woman is none other than Yae, satisfied with her performance. Kana, still shaken, immediately scolds them for taking the prank too far, while Teru scans the crowd, searching for the second figure he saw earlier. Suddenly, he feels something behind him, and he turns to find the figure standing there. The figure removes its mask, revealing Iso. Hina explains that Iso had been portraying a Pontu, a visitor god and protector spirit. Unlike traditional guardian figures, the Pontu has an unsettling, almost terrifying appearance, meant to ward off evil. However, its looks have scared children off the island. It's covered in mud and is known to smear people, houses, and even cars to protect them from malevolent spirits. Yae reveals that the original plan had been for her to scare Kana and Teru until Izo jumped in as the Pontu to save them. But because the two of them panicked and ran away too soon, the big reveal never happened. Teru, still catching his breath, wonders aloud why a god of protection looks so horrifying. Izo shrugs, unable to provide an answer, but he beams with satisfaction at how well this costume turned out. After the test of courage, the group walks home together. They decide to drop Kana off first, and before she steps into her house, She takes a moment to stare at her hand, still remembering the warmth of Teru's grasp. The feeling lingers, and she quietly engraves the memory into her heart, cherishing the moment as one of the highlights of her summer. Inside, her family is already waiting for her. Suzu rushes forward, expecting to see her distressed, only to frown in disappointment when Kana appears completely fine. A few days later, Teru eagerly presents his bike to Hina and Kana, expecting them to be impressed. Instead, they frown at the sight of it, noting the rust that has overtaken the frame and the chain that creaks with every slight movement. The girls immediately point out that the salty water and air from the last typhoon must have caused the damage. Having lived on the island for so long, they know how quickly metal corrodes when exposed to the sea breeze. Okinawans have long since adapted to these conditions, taking special care of their belongings to prevent rust and decay. Even car owners take extra precautions, lining up at gas stations for hours after a typhoon to have their vehicles properly washed. Realizing he has been neglectful, Teru decides to take his bike to a repair shop, only to learn that the nearest one is almost 7 kilometers away. Unlike other parts of Japan, Okinawa has very few bike shops. The island's steep terrain, extreme humidity, frequent thunderstorms, and salt-heavy air make bicycles an inconvenient mode of transportation, leading most residents to favor cars as their favorite mode of transportation. As the reasons pile up, Teru begins to wonder if repairing his bike is even worth it. His thoughts are interrupted when they notice Tetsu standing nearby, quietly observing them. Without a word, Tetsu quickly repairs Teru's bike. With his bike finally fixed, Teru feels a renewed excitement and suggests they all go biking together. However, his enthusiasm falters when he notices Hina's stiff posture. Her reaction makes it clear that she probably has never learned how to ride a bike. Wanting to prove herself, Hina takes hold of the handlebars, determined to show. Hina manages to get the bike moving forward, albeit unsteadily. Her movements are wobbly, but she feels confident enough to turn her head and show off her progress. However, the moment she does, she loses control, toppling over in an instant. Teru and Kana immediately rush toward her, their expressions filled with concern. Rather than admit the truth, Hina quickly blames the island's roads for being too slippery, brushing off the incident as an unfortunate accident rather than her own lack of skill. While her excuse is flimsy, there is some truth to it. Okinawa's streets are known to be quite slippery due to their unique composition. Made with a mix of coral and cement, the roads often have a slick finish. To combat this issue, sandstone has to be imported for highways to provide better traction and reduce accidents, as cars tend to move at high speeds. Despite her attempt to cover up the truth, she soon realizes she cannot keep up the act when Teru notices she fell on sand rather than the road. It becomes painfully obvious that she has never learned how to ride a bike. Instead of teasing her, Teru decides to help. He offers to guide the bike while she pedals, keeping her balance steady. Teru, on the other hand, can't help but smile at the adorable scene unfolding before him. Sitting nearby, Kana watches them from her seat. A pang of jealousy settles in her chest as she sees how much fun Hina and Teru are having together. Though she knows it's silly, she silently wishes she could have been the one struggling on the bike, giving Teru a reason to hold onto her and guide her forward. With the arrival of the second school term, the summer heat finally gives way to a cooler breeze. Teru walks along the ocean with Kana and Hina, relishing the change in temperature. Though relieved by the refreshing air, a part of him feels sentimental that summer has come to an end. His mind replays the most shocking moments of his summer vacation, and he realizes just how often he embarrasses himself in front of Hina, the girl he has a crush on. Determined to change, he makes a silent vow to be less easily startled. He reassures himself that the craziness of summer is over, fall will bring a sense of calm, and nothing unexpected will happen anymore. Just as he convinces himself, a strange sound echoes through the forest. Teru pauses, thinking it's a bird, but Kana casually corrects him, explaining that it's actually the call of an Ushima cicada, a species unique to Okinawa. Shocked, Teru immediately reacted, breaking the varied vow he had just made. Okinawa is home to several cicada species, including the Ryukyu abura and Kuroa nini. Unlike their mainland counterparts, these cicadas continue singing well into November. Teru is once again stunned that cicadas continue to sing after the summer, and the girls are equally shocked that in Tokyo, cicadas only sing during the summer. The girls also take great delight in pointing out how often he is surprised by Okinawa's quirks. Listening to their teasing, Teru suddenly finds himself smiling. He had been reluctant to leave Tokyo, worried about losing his old friends and starting over in a new place. But standing here beside Kana and Hina, he realizes just how much he has gained. Since meeting them, every day has been filled with laughter, adventure, and new experiences. There has never been a dull moment. Feeling a bit embarrassed by the sentiment, he thanks them for befriending him. Hina responds by sharing that whenever she feels lonely, she comes to the sea. Teru gazes out at the vast, endless blue, and a sense of calm washes over him. For a moment, he feels as though he understands Hina a little better. However, Hina soon clarified her statement. she hadn't meant it in a deep, introspective way. Instead, she explains that Okinawans simply love the beach, so it naturally becomes a gathering place. Looking around, Teru notices familiar faces scattered along the shore. He expects Hina to share more wisdom, but she simply tells him that the beach is the place where people come when they have nothing else to do or are bored. If he ever finds himself bored, he's bound to run into someone here to pass the time with. As the sun begins to set, the once busy shore gradually empties. Teru watches in disbelief as people leave almost in unison, stunned by yet another unexpected Okinawan custom. While grocery shopping, Teru immediately notices something unusual. The atmosphere inside the store feels different. Customers seem unusually alert, their heads tilting slightly as if listening for something. He glances around and spots Hina and Kana standing among the shoppers, their expressions serious and concentrated. Curious, Teru tries to ask them what's going on, but neither of them takes a second to respond to him properly. Suddenly, the sound of a trumpet rings through the store. In an instant, the mood shifts. Excited murmurs spread among the crowd as a delivery man enters, carrying a fresh batch of shima tofu. Apparently, tofu is a huge deal in Okinawa, with the prefecture being one of the largest consumers of it in Japan. Shima tofu, a local specialty, is particularly beloved for its fresh taste, high protein content, and low calories, making it a popular choice for those on a healthy diet. He looks toward the tofu aisle and notices something even more surprising, a delivery schedule posted on the wall. Hina explains that many Okinawans are particular about the brand they buy, so grocery stores list their tofu delivery times for customers. Curious about all the fuss, Teru reaches out to take a pack of shima tofu, only to immediately pull his hand back in shock. The tofu is hot. He had expected it to be cold as it usually was in Tokyo. Seeing his reaction, the girls explain that shima tofu is sold fresh, still warm from production. To maintain its safety and quality, it must be sold within 3 hours of being made. As they exit the grocery store, Hina suddenly suggests going to Kana's house to try the tofu together. Though initially surprised, Kana agrees, albeit a little flustered. Soon, they find themselves sitting at Kana's dining table surrounded by an impressive array of tofu-based dishes, all prepared by Kana's grandmother. And before they start eating, one bowl is set aside as an offering at the family shrine. As they dig in, the comforting warmth of the food makes everyone feel at ease. Even Suzu enjoys herself so much that she ends up dozing off, her belly full. However, the moment she hears that dessert is about to be served, she springs back to life, eyes wide with anticipation. Kana's grandmother sets a small dish in front of Teru. It contains tofu accompanied by a packet of dark sauce. At first, he assumes it's a joke, but as he observes the others, he sees them pouring the sauce over the tofu and eating it enthusiastically. Its strange sketchiness now evident. His gaze lingers on Hina a little longer. Her delighted expression as she enjoys the dessert is oddly endearing. Encouraged by their reactions, Teru decides to take a bite. The moment it touches his tongue, he's taken aback by the unexpected sweetness. It tastes nothing like the tofu he's familiar with. Kana happily explains that this is jimemi tofu, a unique Okinawan dessert made with peanuts aside from pure soy. It has a distinct chewy, mochi-like texture and is typically served with sweet soy sauce or kuromitsu, a dark sugar syrup. Impressed, Teru expresses his admiration for Okinawan cuisine. Hearing his praise, Suzu and Hina beam with pride, happy that someone from outside the prefecture appreciates their local food. As Kana and Hina leave to fetch some refreshments and more snacks, Teru remains at the dining table with Suzu. She insists that he tries her grandfather's favorite tofu, determined to share even more of her beloved Okinawan traditions with him. As Kana and Hina return to the room, they find Teru passed out in a corner. At first, Kana rushes toward him in a panic, but as she gets closer, she notices something odd. Instead of looking distressed, he has a blissful expression on his face as if he has just experienced something divine. Her eyes shift to the nearly empty plate beside him, and the realization dawns on her. The culprit is tafuyu, a type of pickled tofu fermented in a wamori, Okinawa's traditional sake. The girls immediately remember why this is a problem. Teru cannot handle alcohol. Memories of his first encounter with Okinawan soba flood their minds, reminding them of how he had become unexpectedly touchy-feely when slightly intoxicated. Bracing themselves for whatever might happen next, they expect another chaotic display of gratitude from him. Kana, in particular, thinks he will shower her with thanks, just as he had done last time. But Teru surprises them by turning to Kana's grandmother instead, offering her heartfelt praise for all the delicious meals she has prepared for him since he moved to Okinawa. Hina laughs and makes a playful remark about Kana's grandfather feeling jealous in the afterlife. Kana's grandmother, however, simply smiles and reassures them that as long as she is happy, her husband will be happy too. Eventually, Teru drifts back into sleep, leaving Hina and Kana to sit together and reminisce about the past as they wait for him to wake up. Kana suddenly brings up a memory from several years ago, a moment that still stands out vividly in both of their minds. Hina's grandmother, Sachiko, had fallen ill, too weak to leave her bed. Though Hina wanted nothing more than to stay by her side, Sachiko had gently insisted that she go out and play, not wanting her granddaughter to worry. But no matter how much Hina tried, she could not ignore the anxiety that weighed on her heart. That day, Kana had stopped by, cheerfully inviting Hina to play. But it did not take long for her to notice that something was wrong. When she learned about Sachiko's condition and how she had not eaten anything, she immediately became determined to help. Together, they tried to think of a meal that Sachiko might find both nutritious and easy to eat. After some discussion, they settled on yoshi tofu, a soft and fluffy tofu dish that would be easy to digest. However, they were unsure if they had enough money to buy it. Still, they set off to the supermarket, hopeful that they could find something within their budget. Eventually, they are able to purchase the tofu. On the way home, in their excitement to return quickly, they became careless. Kana tripped and the bag of tofu slipped from her hands, spilling onto the ground. Seeing the food ruined, Kana burst into tears, devastated by her mistake. Hina, equally upset, ended up crying as well. Despite their setback, they managed to salvage some of the tofu and continued home. Using what little they had left, they prepared a simple soup and brought it to Sachiko. Sachiko, touched by their efforts, expressed her gratitude with a word neither of them had heard before, nuchikusui. It was only later that they learned its meaning, medicine of life. She had not realized that the soup's thin consistency was not entirely intentional. The girls had added extra water to stretch the portion, trying to make up for the tofu they had lost. After some hesitation, the girls eventually confessed the truth to Sachiko about how the soup ended up too thin. As she speaks, she suddenly notices Kana's scraped knee, the result of her earlier fall. Without hesitation, Sachiko gently pats Kana's chest and back, her touch filled with comfort and understanding. Hina, realizing for the first time that Kana had gotten hurt, immediately went up to hug her, apologizing repeatedly for not noticing sooner. Watching the two girls embrace, Sachiko pulled them both close, wrapping them in a warm hug. She calls them her real nuchigisui, her true medicine of life. The next day at school, Teru's class is having home economics, and whatever they cook, they will have to eat for their lunch. Teru finds himself grouped with his usual friends, feeling particularly lucky since this means he gets to see Hina in an apron up close. As the group begins discussing their dish, Teru volunteers to chop the goya. However, when he says its name, he unknowingly mispronounces it, causing the entire group to immediately correct him. They explain that many mainland Japanese people pronounce it differently, which often irritates Okinawans. Some people even take to the internet hoping to spread awareness on how to pronounce the vegetable. Curious, Teru quickly searches online and finds that Goya's official name is Nagori, while Goya or Goya is just the Okinawan dialect. Upon hearing this, Hina suddenly goes stiff. She had always believed Goya was the universal name and never realized it was an Okinawan-specific term. The realization leaves her slightly embarrassed, but she quickly brushes it off as they move on with their cooking. Once they start food preparations, the group is impressed by how skilled Teru is with a knife. Hina, Tensuki, and Iso, eager to take advantage of this, start assigning him more tasks. However, in their excitement, they accidentally use their dialect, leaving Teru utterly confused. To make matters worse, someone hands him a can that he needs to open, but the design is completely foreign to him. He examines it, puzzled by the lack of a pull tab or any other familiar mechanism. No matter how he turns it in his hands, he cannot figure out how to open it. Kana, noticing his dilemma, steps in and calmly explains that the can has an opening tool at the bottom. She picks up the small, key-like object attached to it and demonstrates how to use it. Teru watches closely as she rolls the tool along a thin metal tag, slowly peeling back the lid. After opening the can, Kana also takes the time to explain some of the Okinawan cooking instructions that had confused him. She clarifies that stirring until gooey refers to a specific consistency they are looking for, and she teaches him the words for slicing and mixing together. Okinawans often use their dialect even while cooking, which can be confusing for someone unfamiliar with it. Once she is sure he understands, Kana excuses herself to return to her own tasks, but not before reassuring Teru that he can ask her for help anytime he is unsure of something. Teru watches her as she works, touched by her kindness. Despite being one of the busiest members of the group, she had taken the time to help him without hesitation. With her home economics class coming to an end, Teru and his group finish preparing a variety of amazing dishes that pleasantly tease their taste buds. As they eat, Teru expresses how much he enjoyed the experience, sharing that he learned many new words and phrases unique to Okinawan cooking. The guys nod in agreement before playfully informing him that some of these cooking terms can also have different meanings. For example, shirashi is typically used to describe slicing vegetables, but it can also mean getting close to someone. Yae seizes the opportunity to tease Kana and Teru. She turns to Kana and prompts her to explain the word takue mokue, a phrase that symbolizes togetherness and bonding. Before Kana can answer, Hina pushes Kana and Teru closer together, playfully demonstrating the meaning of the word. The unexpected closeness causes both Teru and Kana to heat up in embarrassment. Hina, staying kind of flustered, quickly checks to make sure she's okay. while the boys waste no time teasing Teru for getting so close to Kana. After school, the group meets up with Tetsu to hang out. At one point, Ina asks if he will be going fishing tomorrow, but Tetsu shakes his head, saying that tomorrow is his Moa day. Teru, unfamiliar with the term, is initially confused as he only knows Moa as the famous stone-head statue from Easter Island. When the rest of the guys express happiness for Tetsu and even daydream about Moa, Teru starts to believe that Okinawans must be fans of the statues. Instead of asking for clarification, he quickly searches for Moe online. As he reads, he becomes deeply touched by the origins of the statues, mistaking them for something culturally significant in Okinawa. Kana, noticing Teru's misunderstanding, explains that Moe is actually a social gathering where people save money collectively and later use it to celebrate with friends. Before leaving, Tetsu tries to impart an important lesson to Teru about the value of meeting up with friends for Moe. However, Kana, well aware of her brother's habits, immediately calls him out, exposing his real motive, using Moa as an excuse to drink. Walking home together, the group makes an agreement to continue the Moa tradition when they get older. The boys take the opportunity to tease Teru for his low alcohol tolerance, recalling his embarrassing behavior the last time he had even a sip of alcohol from udon. Unbeknownst to them, a new girl with light skin and striking purple hair passes by, silently observing the group with a curious expression. The following day after school, Yae and Kana are assigned to clean the stairs. As they work, Yae complains about Kana being lazy. Kana, however, misinterprets this and assumes Yae is calling her out for gaining weight. Yae quickly corrects her and instead brings up a more pressing matter: Kana's progress in confessing to Teru. Yae, worried that they will still be stuck in this unresolved tension even when they are old, tries to encourage Kana to take action before it is too late. She warns Kana that if she keeps hesitating, another girl might swoop in and steal Teru's heart. As they pass by the classroom, Yae spots Teru inside and tries to get his attention. However, she quickly notices that he is not alone. Hina is with him, clutching a letter tightly to her chest. Kana freezes, her heart dropping at the sight. A letter in Hina's hands could only mean one thing: a romantic confession. Panic and uncertainty rush through her, making her unable to move. Yae, wanting Kana to win, decides to take action and rush over to them. However, before she can say anything, Hina reacts instinctively, hiding the letter behind her back and acting suspiciously. Without warning, Hina bolts out of the classroom, leaving Teru stunned. Without hesitation, he chases after her, leaving Kana and Yae standing there in shock. As Hina finally stops to catch her breath, she clutches the letter even tighter, her mind racing. Teru's unexpected words completely caught her off guard. Her face burns as she tries to process what just happened. Teru had just confessed his feelings to her,